Avatar. Playing Waterbending. Chapter 1. After experiencing an intense fever, I woke up in my sweat-soaked bed. I stared at the icy ceiling, dizziness clouding my head. My body shivered from the cold. Despite being a native of the South Pole and having high resistance to the cold, it was the first time in my life I couldn't bear it, even though I was inside my warm ice house. When did I get sick? A jolt of pain shot through my brain. Although I was alone, I heard a sound. I turned my head left and right, trying to locate where it was coming from. The system has been installed. You may now start playing in game mode. As I heard the strange robotic voice, I wondered when I had ever known the word robotic. That word didn't belong to this world. Wait a minute, I didn't belong to this world either. A rush of memories from my previous life flashed before me. All my life has been a lie. My name is Josh, and my previous life was on Earth. This world is nothing but a cartoon show. I thought about the last thing I remembered. I was at work when I got an email, a game survey asking me to help create a game. A world of my choice. I had chosen the world of Avatar, the last airbender, and requested that everyone be adults for the sake of fan service, or research. But none of that matters. After I filled out that survey, I transmigrated, lost my memories, and spent 17 years in this world. I looked at my tanned skin. In my previous life, it had been white. It seems I can say, you, in Korean. But there was no one I could say it to. I touched my hair. It was smooth, held in braids. But it didn't feel unfamiliar. Living without my memories for 17 years helped me accept my transmigration so easily that I didn't miss anything from my previous life. I didn't feel the loss of everything. There wasn't much to mourn. All I had in my previous life was a job, and with the rising cost of living, I could no longer afford leisure. I lived only to pay bills, rent, and buy groceries. So, losing everything didn't seem like a big deal. I had nothing worth keeping. So, I guess there's no identity crisis. I'm Josh, and I'm Ryak. One is my previous life, and the other is my current life, the one I remember. Now for the important stuff. I sat up. The fever had passed, and I felt better. I decided to summon the game-like interface. But it was strange. There were no character levels or stats. There was a storage slot and a skills slot. You gain experience by practicing your skills in a certain way. You accumulate experience when defeating someone, and this experience could be used to level up skills without actually practicing them, or to fill the storage. I knew all of this the moment the system was installed in my head. I believed it was designed to help my brain and body instantly master skills when leveling them up, making it game-like. But so what? Was that it? Could I just gain skills? I'd never be able to stop an army by myself, or be as strong as the Avatar. Or would I? Anyway, I rubbed my chin. Thinking about the Avatar, although Katara and Sokka were 17 and 18 years old, I had never met Aang. They never talked about him. At the same time, there was no sign of the Fire Nation army. This left me with two possibilities. 1. The Avatar hadn't appeared, and the Fire Nation had succeeded in taking over the Earth Kingdom. Now, they were probably busy invading the North Pole. The second possibility was what I hoped for. This universe was an alternative reality where everyone was a bit older, and events would unfold as they did in the canon. Either possibility could ruin my life. I needed to gather information, or else I'd be filled with anxiety. Before leaving my house, I glanced at my stats window. Name: Ryak. Tree skills: Waterbending 1, Kai Bending 1. Skills: Fishing 2. Accumulated experience: 0. For this world's standards, if printed, this would look like the worst CV imaginable. But on the bright side, there was some good news. I had the waterbending skill. This makes me wonder. Did my choices in the survey turn into reality? Or is this just some coincidence or lame excuse some Rob used to entertain themselves? As for whether this world was the first possibility or the second, I could figure something out. The only way to get the right answers was to ask the right questions. It would be better to ask the elders and women, who hadn't been drafted into the resistance against the Fire Nation, an enemy we hadn't heard about for nearly a decade. After leaving my tent, I faced the endless white landscape. It was nothing but ocean, snow, ice, and a few tents and ice houses. Inside them were mostly elderly people and very young children. As I walked around, a couple of kids, with tanned skin and blue eyes, ran by. Hey, have you seen Sokka or Katara? I asked the children. One of them answered, they saw you had a fever, so they went off to gather food on their own. They must be preparing for the boats. I rubbed the back of my head. The food reserves must be running low if Sokka and Katara had to hunt in this cold. Anyway, I had a few questions for them, and since I was impatient for their return, I decided to follow. Thanks, kids. Don't stray too far from the tribe, I advised before setting off in the direction they had gone. At this pace, I should catch up before they sailed out. About 15 minutes later, I arrived. I was out of breath from sprinting, but my body seemed fine, considering it wasn't the first time I had done it. I must have quite an athletic physique, I thought to myself, smiling as I saw the siblings preparing the boat. They seemed to notice me. I looked at them. They were the same as in the show, but different at the same time. Sokka looked to be in his late teens, tall and skinny, with the same hairstyle as in the show. Katara, on the other hand, seemed more mature. She was of average height, with long hair and blue eyes. Although she wore a blue coat to cover her body, it couldn't hide her curves. Her hips were wide, and her chest was full. Ryak, shouldn't you be resting? You were in bad shape when I left you, remarked Sokka. I forced a smile and replied, the fever's gone. I'm not sure why it happened, but I'm fine now. Since I had some time, I decided to catch up. You shouldn't have pushed yourself, Katara said, eyeing me with concern. It's not like the tribe is starving or anything. No, it's fine. I'm just doing my duty, I said. Now that we were talking, I decided to strike up a conversation about bending. If this world was the first possibility, she'd be the best bender in the world. I wanted to know how things were going in this timeline. Was Aang still trapped under the ice? Had he appeared a few years ago and died miserably in a battle, which was very unlikely considering his avatar state? By the way, how far have you progressed with your bending, Katara? I asked. Katara twirled a strand of her hair around her finger. Looking slightly embarrassed, she replied, not much. I can make simple waves and pulls. I can do ice, but no matter how hard I try, without a proper teacher, I can't seem to progress. I told her she should practice while washing clothes, Sokka whispered, but I just got my face sprayed instead. Anyway, why are you suddenly so interested? Katara asked. It's not like you care about anything other than when someone will take you into battle. Well, I just woke up and was curious, I said. How's the avatar, by the way? Has he decided to join the fight? What avatar? Sokka replied. Grandma says it's been almost 100 years since he last appeared. Bingo. Almost 100 years. That meant there was still some time before Sozin's comet. Also, this was an alternative universe, where everyone was a bit older. How much time exactly has passed since the avatar disappeared? I asked, wanting to confirm my guess. If my instincts were right, we were about 1 or 2 years away from Sozin's comet. And if the avatar never appeared, we were all screwed. The Fire Nation would dominate the Earth Kingdom and force its way to the North and South Poles, taking over the world. The person who would suffer the most would be me. You see, as a growing nation, the Fire Nation would need more resources. The poor South had nothing to offer but labor. I didn't want to end up a slave to another nation, so I had to act. I don't know. Nearly 100 years. I never paid attention to those details, Sokka shrugged. Interesting. I rubbed my chin. Okay, Ryak, you've been acting weird. Why are you suddenly interested in bending, the avatar, and everything? Katara asked. Apparently, when I regained my memories from my past life, there was a conflict between the personas of both lives. My personality shifted slightly. Seeing Katara's suspicious gaze, I knew I couldn't tell her that their lives were a comic from my previous life. So, I ended up saying, you see, I discovered I can bend. Did you have vivid dreams while you had the fever? Sokka asked. You've never been able to bend, and benders don't show ability at your age. I agree with Sokka, Katara nodded. Sighing, I squatted down and stretched my hands toward the sea, hoping something impressive would happen to shut them up. Nothing happened. I stood up and tried again, pushing my hands toward the sea. Again, nothing. Katara, with a half-serious tone, remarked, you know, you have to move your hands as if you're making waves in the water. Oh, you mean like this? I said, waving my arm through the air, imagining I was pushing water. A fist-sized jet of water shot from the sea and flew in another direction, catching me by surprise. I pulled, and the water headed back toward me. Waterbending plus 2 XP. The water splashed on my face, reminding me how cold the sea was. Sokka looked at me in astonishment. Since when? He asked. On the other hand, Katara was confused at first, then she got excited. I'm not the only one. Sokka turned toward the sea and began waving his hand, as if expecting something to happen. But nothing did. Come on, man. I just discovered it after the fever, I smiled. The spirits have blessed me. It seemed their focus had shifted from my sudden interest in the Avatar and the war. But I was starting to feel anxious. With the Avatar still asleep, and the Sozin comet getting closer, the narcissistic Fire Nation would come from across the world just to make my life hell for their own satisfaction. Fishing plus 2 EXP, fishing plus 20 EXP. While I was on the boat with the siblings, the notification sound kept ringing in my ear. It made me think that if I got into a fight, the continuous notifications about experience gained would be quite annoying. Luckily, there was a parameters option on the system screen, and I managed to select what I wanted to be notified about. Now, I would only get notifications for leveling up and when I learned new skills. I breathed a sigh of relief when I caught another fish. I was thrusting my spear into the water whenever I saw or felt a ripple. Then, with a strong pull, I'd catch a fish. The probability was decent, about 1 in 10 attempts. Fishing up to level 3. Once the skill leveled up, I felt the changes instantly. I could spot the ripples in the water better, and my reaction speed improved. On one attempt, I missed, but on the next, I succeeded. After a few more tries, I noticed that my success rate had increased to 2 in 10. There were even times when I caught 4 fish in a row. Overall, my success rate was now 20%, a remarkable improvement. While I was immersed in the changes in my skill, Katara stood behind me and cleared her throat. She seemed to have something to say ever since we got on the boat. But since I was busy testing the level up process with my fishing skill, I barely paid her any attention, so she didn't say anything. Excuse me, she said, grabbing my attention by touching my shoulder, causing me to stop fishing. Yes. I turned to her and raised an eyebrow. You seem very calm for someone who just discovered they can bend water, she said. Well, how am I supposed to react? I asked with a smile. When I realized I could bend, I was so happy and excited. She trailed off and seemed to become sad for some reason. I knew why. Her mother had been killed under the allegation of being a waterbender. Well, I suppose if I were younger, I'd be jumping with excitement, I replied. Anyways, even though I can bend now, what's the use? Without proper guidance, I can't hope to achieve a high level on my own. Well, there was hope, but it would require a lot of grinding. True. But you know, when you train with someone, your skills improve quickly, she said. So I was thinking, once this fishing trip is over, how about we find some exercises to practice? Oh, you seem to have something in mind. I mused. She seemed more excited than me. Well, considering she didn't know what might happen if we don't find the Avatar, she could afford to be carefree. On the other hand, I had a real anxiety about it. My very existence could change many things, like Sokka and Katara's mood on the day they're supposed to find the Avatar. One thing leads to another, and you know, the butterfly effect theory. Yes. Katara nodded. I had some ideas a long time ago, but since I was the only bender here, I couldn't put them into proper practice. Great. I'll be in your care, I replied. I'm not that good in the first place, she said, blushing slightly despite her tanned cheeks. Just to be clear, people do blush when they're embarrassed or praised. I turned my attention back to the ocean and continued fishing. At first, Sokka had caught more fish than I did, but I eventually caught up and got more. Every time I caught a bigger fish, I gained more experience. I occasionally checked the window to see my progress. Eventually, I reached level 4, and things started picking up. My success rate rose to 30%. We had plenty of food before calling it a day and heading back to the tribe. When we returned, we were greeted by women and children, who gathered around us. We distributed the food evenly. Meanwhile, While I fished, I had hidden a few fish in my storage to test something. I was wondering whether things would be preserved in the storage or if they would rot with time. If time doesn't affect things in storage, it'd be useless to season and store food in the system, I thought to myself. Well, a man with extra testosterone thinks with his D, and a hungry man thinks with his stomach. Only a satisfied man thinks with his brain. Leave thinking about the Fire Nation for later. I'll have to dry these fish before eating them. It's not hard to start a fire, but seaweed and wood are rare to find, I thought to myself. Luckily, I had dried fish somewhere. I was starting to think, once I find the Avatar, I'll head to the Earth Kingdom and experience real food. I'm getting tired of this fish-heavy diet. When I said I didn't miss anything from my previous life, I guess I wasn't totally honest. Leaving that aside, after agreeing with Katara to meet tomorrow for training, I bid my farewell to her and Sokka and went to my ice house. I ate my food and then laid down. Now that I was alone and satisfied, I started thinking about the potential of the system. Sure, I might never get as powerful as the Avatar, but I could achieve a power that he could never hope to attain. If I leveled up my waterbending skills, I could learn bloodbending, which is enough to kill an army by myself. And since it's a system, I might be able to level up bloodbending beyond what's known in the series. In the legend of Korra, Korra was almost killed by the weakest bloodbender. Unless one has the Avatar state to aid them, bloodbending is guaranteed to deliver the kill. Anyway, you could kill the Avatar before he activates the Avatar state. That's the power of waterbending, bloodbending. While thinking about the possibilities, I drifted into sleep. When I woke up and sat up, I thought to myself, I didn't even realize when I fell asleep. After having a small breakfast, I washed myself and changed into clean clothes. I'd wash my spare change when I returned later. As I stepped outside, I thought about how I would spend the day. The obvious answer was to increase my combat potential by leveling up waterbending. Then, I'd look for some random iceberg to see if there's an airbender inside. When I reached the outskirts of the tribe, I found Katara standing and playing with a floating water ball, making it dance beautifully in the air. Watching her, I thought about mimicking her movements to gain experience. Maybe I wouldn't need a teacher, thanks to the system. But training was still mandatory. I walked over to Katara and called out, Katara, you're up early. Ryak, you usually don't wake up until a few hours later, she remarked. I fell asleep early, I replied, pointing at the ball of water she was manipulating. Anyway, what are you doing? Practicing, she said, then asked, do you want to join me? That's exactly why I had approached her in the first place, so I nodded. Sure. Alright, she said with a smile. I've created a game called Passing the Ball. She moved her body fluidly, almost like dancing, and waved her arms. Water rose from the ground, forming into a ball that floated beside her. First, copy my movements and try to hold the water in a ball shape. Once you've mastered that, we'll pass it back and forth. Whoever drops it first loses. Sounds fun to you, I nodded, but to me, it sounds like I'll be the one losing. She chuckled. Maybe, but you'll gain experience. Now, go ahead and give it a try. I sighed and stepped a little farther away to give myself room. I replayed her movements in my head and mimicked them. As I went through the smooth motions, I felt a strange energy flowing through my veins. Water rose from the ground and hovered between my hands, only to collapse into a puddle moments later. I couldn't even form a ball, let alone hold it. I opened the system window and checked the log. Waterbending plus 2 XP. Well, at least my effort wasn't in vain. To keep myself motivated, I decided to turn on the sound notifications for now. And so, I began practicing. Waterbending. Waterbending plus. Waterbending plus. Waterbending up to level 2. Skill tree has been upgraded. Plus skill. Push and pull. Kai bending plus 50 XP. Suddenly, a wave of information flooded my mind. It was like remembering something long forgotten. Instinctively, I knew how to move. I raised my hands, feeling the energy coursing through me. Water rose from the icy ground and floated before me. With a push of my arms, I sent it away. Waterbending plus 5 XP. You're getting the hang of it, Katara cheered from where she had been watching me practice for the past hour. I smiled back at her. I'll have that water ball mastered in no time. I'll be waiting, she said, though she added, but don't expect it to be easy. I struggled for a long time to get to that point on my own. To be fair, I said, if you'd had a teacher, you probably would have picked it up much faster. And I was being honest. In the show, Katara was one of the most talented waterbenders. She had bested the Northern Water Tribe's Grandmaster with ease, and her skills were on par with Azula, a prodigy who had been training all her life. Katara, on the other hand, had been training for less than a year. I returned to my practice, focusing on forming the water into a ball. Waterbending plus 10 XP. It seemed that trying new techniques earned more experience than repeating basic moves. By the time another half hour had passed, I received a notification. Waterbending up to level 3. Skill tree has been upgraded. Bending will now feel more natural. With the level up, that same strange wave of knowledge hit me again. When I tried pushing and pulling the water this time, it felt much smoother. At first, I had struggled to control the water's speed, it had just followed my movements chaotically. But now, it flowed in sync with me. Slowly, I gathered the water into a perfect ball. I turned to Katara, excitement lighting up my face. Look, I said, holding the ball in my hands proudly. Wow, great job, she said, genuinely impressed. Should we play now? I teased, grinning. Katara, twirling a strand of her hair absent-mindedly, replied, I don't know, bending can be exhausting. You must be tired by now. She was right. I did feel a bit drained. Maybe I had overused my Kai. You've got a point, I said, sitting down. A little break won't hurt. As I rested, I thought about Kai. It felt like a muscle, the more I used it, the stronger it would become over time. That thought reminded me of Tai Li. If I remembered correctly, she could block a person's Kai by striking certain pressure points. I wondered if it was possible for me to learn that technique. After all, it was powerful enough to allow a non-bender to take down skilled benders. When we returned to the tribe, I joined Sokka on a fishing trip. Our goal was to catch enough fish to build up reserves for the small tribe, just about 10 women, a few older folks, and some children. Food had to be dried before it was edible, so having extra stock was always better. By the end of the trip, we'd caught enough to feed everyone for 2 days. On the way back, Sokka kept glancing at me until he finally asked, You've gotten better. Did you use waterbending to guide the fish to us? In truth, my fishing skill had leveled up to 5. It was a simple skill that didn't require much effort to improve. Still, I noticed that the rate of progress slowed with each level. I didn't, I replied with a smirk. But that's not a bad idea at all. Right. Sokka grinned. With you and Katara, we could catch enough food for a week in just 1 day. But then what? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Do you have any entertainment planned for afterward? I'll make a nice bed, he replied, sounding carefree. I couldn't help but envy him. He had no idea about the dangers lurking ahead. Meanwhile, I was constantly worried about the Avatar and what lay ahead. If I wanted to find Aang, I needed to master waterbending, at least enough to survive the icy waters without freezing to death. A couple of days later, I stared at the experience bar of the waterbending skill to check how much progress I had made. Waterbending level 4, 354 hundredths. Earning experience had become noticeably slower. Sweat trickled down my forehead. At my current level, waterbending was exhausting, but I could feel a significant improvement in my stamina. It was like I could bend 20% longer than before. Maybe it worked like a muscle. The more I trained, the longer I could sustain it. Though, if it's like building a muscle, do the rules of intensity and duration apply? Like, no matter how much you train sprinting, you can go fast, but you can't sustain it for long. I don't know. I waved my hand, levitating a small ball of water above my palm and slowly passing it toward Katara. She caught it between her hands, keeping it floating for a moment, then sent it back to me. I caught it. Waterbending plus 10 XP. I passed it back to her. Waterbending plus 5 XP. It was rewarding, but the focus required was draining. I decided to endure it. Unlike most benders who had trained their powers, especially their stamina, I was new to this. Katara, who seemed to be having fun, passed the ball back to me. I caught it between my arms and tried to slow its momentum before sending it back. Although my throw was faster than hers, she managed to hold it. At first, she couldn't handle fast throws, but after a dozen tries, she succeeded, proving her natural talent for waterbending. For a moment, I almost doubted whether she had a system of her own. On the other hand, I could only handle slow throws and barely keep the ball's shape intact. If she threw it too quickly, I wouldn't be able to catch it, losing the little game we were playing. She seemed to realize my limitations and gradually increased the speed, allowing me to adapt. Waterbending leveled up to level 5.08. Kai bending leveled up to level 2. Without fully realizing how much I had improved, I held the water ball in my hands, making it hover and move more fluidly. My control had improved significantly, and I could manipulate it with greater ease. When I passed it back to Katara, the movement felt far less draining than before. Wow, easy there, she exclaimed as she caught the ball, which moved faster than usual. As if to get back at me, she threw it even faster. Normally, it would have smacked me in the face and fallen to the ground. But this time, with a quick motion of my hand, I slowed its momentum, circled it around my body, and made it float again. Okay, that's some freaky improvement right there, she remarked. Now that you're at this level, let's play a different game. We'll throw water balls at each other. If you block it, you get a point. If you get hit, you lose a point. Whoever has the highest score after 10 minutes wins. This method of training was good enough to help me level up further, though it wasn't exactly a method to learn how to bend like a master. Still, with peaceful days like these, I didn't mind the slow pace of leveling up. At least this way, I could appreciate the calm. The next day, early morning, I stood next to the ocean, my boat nearby. In one hand, I held a spear, and I wore tight, form-fitting clothes. I didn't wear much today, believing that too many layers wouldn't keep me warm enough and would only weigh me down. To me, the key to world peace lay with the Avatar, an overpowered savior capable of achieving it through sheer strength. If he didn't appear before Sozan's comet, we were all screwed. Once the Fire Nation conquered the Earth Kingdom and the North Pole, I believed it would be our turn to become slaves. Invading nations always claimed some moral high ground, but I'd seen enough in my past life to know better. In World War II, for example, black people had been kidnapped from Africa and displayed in zoos. If the Fire Nation won, at best, I might become a slave, and at worst, I might be treated like an animal. I had no intention of allowing that to happen. I dived into the icy water. The cold didn't bother me as much as I thought it would. Then, an idea struck me. I waved my hand slowly, and the water above me began to spin, forming a rotating bubble that held air inside. Guiding it down to my level, I smiled as I realized it was full of oxygen. Keeping it beside me would be too difficult. It's better to summon air from above as I move, I thought. I began swimming, using waterbending to boost my speed. I was faster than a fish in the sea. Whenever I spotted an iceberg, I dove deeper to inspect it, hoping to find something unusual, like a bald kid or a massive flying bison. Unfortunately, my search for the day turned up nothing. As my body temperature dropped dangerously low, I decided to swim back to my boat. On the way, I spotted some fish and used waterbending to lift them out of the water, freezing them on the ice. When I finally emerged, I was shivering violently, nearly frozen to death. I thrust my arms forward, bending the water out of my soaked clothes and leaving them dry. Then I grabbed a thick fur coat, threw it on, and hugged myself tightly. Adjusting my breathing helped me warm up a little. If I keep searching like this, I'll catch a cold, I thought, shivering. Suddenly, I heard someone approaching. Their footsteps were steady and deliberate, as if they weren't trying to hide their presence. I turned to see Katara holding a steaming cup of something. Now I'm curious. For the past few days, you've been swimming in the freezing water. What are you up to? Juice. When did you learn to make that? I asked as I accepted the cup. Inside were some sea fruits you'd have to travel far to find. Boil it, smash it, and filter it. You know how dry the weather is. And we do have dried wood, she explained. Her words made me think about dried wood. Did she bring it from the forest scene in the Legend of Korra? If so, that place was dangerous. Even without dark spirits, regular spirits weren't something humans should mess with. Anyway, enough with changing the subject. What are you doing? Ever since that fever, you've been acting weird, she said, her big blue eyes scanning my face for any sign of dishonesty. I'm just trying to improve my bending. Learning how to use my environment to my advantage is essential, I replied, sipping the hot juice. It warmed me up, but it cooled quickly in the icy air. Man, I'd kill for some hot tea, maybe made by Iro. It was unlikely to happen, but a man could dream. Oh, come on. You're not planning on fighting a naval battle by yourself, are you? She deadpanned. I forced a small smile. Try not to jinx it. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed across the ice. Someone was running toward us. We turned to see Sokka, panting and out of breath, sprinting with all his might. Katara, Ryak, bad news. Wait a minute, what are you two doing alone together? Sokka asked, his gaze narrowing at me. Chatting, I replied. No need to let your imagination run wild. What's wrong? A Fire Nation ship is approaching. You two, don't show any bending, he urged. Act normal. He glanced at the pile of fish near my feet. Oh, come on. Catching this much will make them think we've got benders here. Katara covered her mouth, looking worried. Unlike the siblings, my concern was different. Was it Zuko? This didn't make sense. Zuko wasn't supposed to appear until Aang woke up. But who knew, this universe might be a parallel one. Let's see what's going on, I said, standing up and stretching as if nothing unusual was happening. When I arrived at the tribe's location, I found most of the children and elderly outside their houses, gathered in one spot. They stared at the masked soldiers, who were dressed in red and black armor and surrounded them. I turned my attention to the large ship, which was producing black smoke that rose, almost creating a black cloud in the sky, polluting the otherwise pure, dry air. I felt like I was choking just standing next to it. I resisted the urge to cough several times and walked in. Since I wasn't used to this kind of air with my current body, I could barely handle the smoke. What's going on? Sokka asked as my eyes darted left and right. To my dismay, I didn't spot an old man named Iroh, nor a prince with a red scar on his eye. But on the bright side, it could mean that it was earlier than I had estimated. If everyone in this parallel world is older, there's a chance Iroh is dead of old age. But thinking about it, I believe I heard that the Fire Lord is still young with black hair. I shouldn't make assumptions other than that everyone here is legal. An elderly woman approached us as the soldiers entered the tents. She said, they're here, looking for a waterbender. Katara's left hand fidgeted. I grabbed her hand, stopping her from making any rash movements. It's going to be okay, I assured her. Don't say anything, Katara whispered. Suddenly, a group of soldiers, with a bald man at the lead, headed toward us. Look at that. I thought only old hags and little children were around. Seems like there are some young, promising ones here, he remarked. Thank you, mister, replied Sokka. We've been staying here to help our tribe by gathering food for them. The bald man looked over my shoulder at the bag I was carrying. What do you have there? He asked. A bunch of uncooked fish, I replied. Don't you eat them dried? He asked. It's rare to find wood to start a fire, I replied. One would have to go far to get it. What's your occupation, young kid? He asked. I'm a fisherman, I replied. Though, not a licensed one. For a fisherman, you've got a pretty heavy bag, he said, repeatedly slapping the bag on my shoulder. I'm not alone. Sokka and I are good at our jobs, I said, not giving any hint that Katara might be a waterbender. In fact, I acted like I didn't know what was going on. By the way, why are you asking? Is the Fire Nation planning to help the South by feeding them? I mused. If you're tired of life, I can feed you to the fish, he said, but that depends. If you're the person we're looking for, or not. I tilted my head, acting confused. I don't understand what you're trying to say. By any chance, is one of you three a waterbender? He went straight to the point. No, I shook my head. How did you even think there's a waterbender? Very well. Our informant will come and point one of you out. He snorted, clapping his hands and smiling warmly. A middle-aged woman appeared from the distance, walking toward us, smiling. Auntie Rakasha. How could you? Sokka yelled, seemingly accepting his sister's fate as he looked at the old woman. Denying that there was a waterbender, especially after someone had already snitched, would be useless. Katara, who was holding my hand, trembled. She smiled softly. My bones are getting stiff, and I was promised to go to a warmer place, Rakasha replied. I turned to Katara and smiled softly. Well, It was fun while it lasted. Since it hadn't been a full week since I awakened my system and memories, the tribe didn't know I was a waterbender. So, the logical suspect would be Katara. She smiled, seeming to suppress a tear. Yes, she then leaned in, and we kissed. It was expected, I guess. I'm the only boy around who isn't her brother, and she's the only girl here. Plus, we had been spending time together. There was some kind of spark. Looking at her, it seemed like she had already accepted her fate. Well, too bad, I decided. It's too early for her to die. But that kiss was a stupid move. It would alert them to take any one of us as a hostage had the other decided to escape. That may be the case. That may be not. Humans act based on emotions more than they do based on logic, which made humans illogical creatures. Anyway, who's the waterbender between these two lovebirds? The bald man pointed at us, seemingly reading the room. Rakasha opened her mouth to speak. But suddenly, water circled around her head, forming a sphere. I had already taken my stance, and I wasn't done. Well, they say hell is warm, right? I waved my hands in different directions, and the water sphere spun, snapping the traitor's neck. I knew it was you. Now, will you die peacefully, or will you make it harder for everyone? The fire soldier leader pointed at me. In this cold weather, not even a dick can get hard. I smirked, my heart pounding as the trained soldiers around me took their fighting stances. I couldn't hope to match them in a fight using bending, especially when all I could do was push water, pull it, and make simple shapes. On the other hand, I wasn't hopeless. On my back, my fishing spear hung. If I could catch a fast fish in the sea with it, I could certainly catch a soldier's head. One of the soldiers jumped, turned, and kicked. Fire appeared next to his leg, following his kick. I swung my spear upward. The ice-frozen water rose, forming a small wall that absorbed the attack. Discovering ice bending under waterbending skill. Plus skill. Freeze. Waterbending up to level 6. Kai bending up to level 3. Ice bending. A big ship sailing. Hold on a second. I've got an idea. Let's hope they are pissed off enough that they don't take hostages. I smirked. What are you smiling for? The bald man asked, fire igniting around his hand, ready to fly toward me at any moment. I'll show you my secret technique, I replied. Behind the soldiers was their ship in the sea. All I needed to do was provoke them a little so they would follow me. I raised my hands and swung them. With my waterbending level increasing, I could tell I could put more Kai into my bending. A layer of ice rose, intercepting the fire streams from the fire benders, before turning into a wave that headed toward them. The wave was fast, but not impactful. All it did was shake them off balance. I ran toward them, passed by them, and continued on. Behind them was the sea. The leader tried to chase after me, sending a few fireballs in my direction. I ignored him, spun, gave him a middle finger, and dove into the water. Part 1 of my plan is done. Now, I just need them to follow me. I sneered, coming to the surface and swimming at high speed. The fire soldiers left the tribe and boarded their ship. Good. They're too angry at my middle finger to remember to take a hostage. Now, let's swim at a speed they think they can catch up to. While swimming, I used my waterbending to push the water around me forward, rather than using my hands and feet to propel myself. This gave me a higher speed than the ship that was chasing me. However, I intentionally slowed down a bit and changed direction instead of moving aimlessly. There was a reason for this, it was to trap them. As the fire soldiers continued chasing me, occasionally a fireball would be launched in my direction. But since we were in the South Pole and there was no sun at this time of year, their power was minimal, and taking me down from a distance would be difficult. Not to mention, it was easy to dodge their fire by sinking a bit deeper into the water. Alright, honey, let's keep going, I muttered to myself as I turned my head. They were still chasing me, and the one in the lead had a determined look in his eyes, as if he were a hunter and I was the prey. Well, I was. As I moved, I opened the system screen and checked the log. Killing a weak, old woman. Plus 100 accumulated express. Accumulated experience was a good thing, I guess. But such a pitiful amount wasn't very useful in my current situation. Anyway, I poured the 100 experience points into Kai bending. Hopefully, it would help me in the future. As time passed, the cold seeped into my bones. Although I was a native of the South Pole, there was a limit to how much I could handle. Luckily, moving my body helped warm me up, and I could control the temperature of the water to a certain degree. After about an hour, I was freezing to the point of near death. I spotted land ahead and jumped onto it. We were still in the South Pole, but I had led them into an isolated area where no one lived. As soon as I got out of the water, I felt my body burning, literally. Luckily, I was a waterbender, so I could control the heat of the water around me. Had it been anyone else, they would have kissed their limbs, if not their life, goodbye. Being exposed to the cold water made the air feel warm, but it didn't stop me from shivering. I might play with the firebenders a bit, I muttered to myself, already thinking of a risky plan. Maybe they'd give me more accumulated experience than that old lady did. Thinking about her, I knew her well. She had always acted like a sweet grandmother, asking about everyone's well-being. But who knew she was a traitor? I had flashes of our time together. Sure, I was originally from Earth, but that didn't erase the 17 years I had spent living here. Although it was a shame she ended up dead, I had no regrets. If I hadn't killed her, she might have told them about Katara or me. But it didn't matter now. All she got from this was death. Lucky me. She didn't tell them about the gender of the waterbender. I rubbed my forehead. It could also be that the fire soldiers thought Rakasha was lying and leading them into a trap. Who knows? Since I had demonstrated my waterbending skills, I would be the one to take the blame. The ship reached the land and stopped. They didn't give me any time to prepare mentally. Some of them jumped off the ship and began shooting fire streams at me. All I could do was raise my hands in defense and bend the ice upward. Waterbending plus 50 XP. Apparently, bending ice was more rewarding than bending water at this point. Usually, I shouldn't have been that good at bending. But I guess the fear of death was making me discover new things about myself. All I had to do now was wait for them to release the anchor. As soon as I heard the anchor drop, I jumped back into the water and sank deeply. As I swam around the anchor, I froze the water around it, turning it into ice, all while wearing an evil smirk on my face. Freeze. Plus 50 XP, freeze. Plus 60 XP, freeze plus. Freeze up to level 2. Freeze up to level 3. The more chains I froze, the higher my skill level became. Not only that, the ice I could create grew larger and larger. And with each level up, the ice felt colder. Maybe if I reach absolute zero one day, who knows? With that thought in mind, I turned in another direction, swimming as fast as I could, heading back to the tribe's location. I needed to deliver a message to Katara and Sokka, find the Avatar and leave the South Pole as soon as possible. Katara had made a stupid move by kissing me in front of the enemy, which meant she could be taken as a hostage. A stupid move, but one that provided me with enough heat while swimming in the freezing water for so long. Though, I wondered. In the Avatar show, they never seemed to use hostages, but that could be because Iroh and Zuko were the ones chasing after the Avatar. I had no idea if other fire soldiers shared the same level of morality, so I needed to get the message to Katara and Sokka. Man, I was getting tired of all this. I now knew I would become a wanted man. The Fire Nation would chase me wherever I went. And I wasn't that good at fighting or bending. After all, I could only bend water in front of me. I had limited reaction speed and no battle experience, well, no break dance fight experience, at least. If someone from the Step Up movies or Bollywood were to reincarnate in this world, they'd be Op. With that thought in mind, I arrived at the tribe's location. Some elders were gathered around Rakasha's body, discussing her funeral. When they spotted me, they didn't shoot me hateful glares or anything. Katara, who had been in shock when I left, saw me and ran toward me. Sokka gave me a sharp glare as he approached. Katara hugged me, her voice filled with concern. You shouldn't have come back. You should have run away. They'll catch up to you in no time. Don't worry, I replied. I froze their anchor. With the weather the way it is, their ship will be stuck for a few days. That's what I hoped. They'd have to wait for a long time, and I doubted the firebenders would have enough tolerance for the cold to come here on foot or by swimming. Even if they did, they'd be in a weakened state. Wait, this gave me another idea. But they'll catch up anyway, she stressed, placing her hands on my shoulders. You know, usually, I'd get angry if something were going on between you two. But I have to thank you for taking the blame for my sister, Sokka said. For a second, I thought I'd lost her. We should escape together, Katara suggested. We're not in a hurry to escape. Well, not today, I shook my head. Anyway, guys, I have something urgent to tell you. Put on more firepower. Kao, the captain of one of the Fire Nation ships, bit his bottom lip. He stood in front of the anchor, while his men shot streams of fire at it endlessly. They had used coal to heat up the ship, but the defrosting process was taking too long. Sorry, sir. At this rate, it will take the whole day to defrost it, reported a soldier. Why don't you go under the water and heat up the chains? Suggested another soldier. We can't ignite fire underwater, a third one said frustratedly, removing his helmet. That fool waterbender. He dares to trap us. Should we use the coal? It would save us a lot of time. And how do you expect us to get back to the Earth Kingdom or any nearby port? Kao snapped at his soldier. Coal was a valuable resource for their machines. As for physical labor, his men could always replenish their energy with food. Even if they exhausted all the food they had, they could force the Water Tribe to hand over their rations or gather more food. Maybe Kao would do that, as a form of revenge against that boy from the Water Tribe. But something's suspicious. That boy didn't seem stressed. Yet, when the old woman was about to point him out as the bender, he killed her. It was almost like he was trying to protect something. Kao thought. Wait. That girl kissed him and cried. Could she be a waterbender too? I don't know. But it's worth capturing her. She could make a nice hostage. So, you're telling us that we should wait here for a bald young man, who's supposed to be the Avatar, but he's hiding under one of the many icebergs around here? Sokka asked, wanting to confirm what he had just heard. Yes. That's what the spirits told me in my dream, I said. To explain how I knew things, I made up a story about a spirit giving me knowledge in a dream. To make it more believable, I claimed that the spirit had also given me the power of waterbending. The fact that I suddenly had waterbending abilities after 17 years of not having them was proof enough for Katara and Sokka. That makes sense, Katara nodded. Can you tell that spirit to visit me next time? Sokka grinned, pointing to himself with his thumb. He didn't hide his desire to gain waterbending powers. Well, I didn't blame him. The power to bend elements was awesome. The feeling of having power over others was also pretty addictive. I shook my head. Ever since that day, the spirit hasn't visited me. But it wasn't that long ago. Maybe you should wait a bit longer, Sokka said, holding onto my arm with both hands. It's not up to me whether you get powers or not. Let me go, I grumbled. Fine. Sokka snorted and released my arm. Anyway, Katara said, what are you going to do now? You're not leaving, but you're not staying. What's next? I smiled smugly. You know, when you use your Kai for too long, you end up feeling exhausted, right? Kai. You mean the energy that flows inside the body when you bend? Katara asked. I feel it sometimes. When it's night, the fire soldiers will take a break, eat, and replenish their energy to continue working on the anchor. How do you think they'll feel in the morning when they face a bigger problem? I looked at Katara. She could be the one to help me. Katara. Yes. She looked up at me with her big blue eyes. Can you freeze and defrost the water? I asked. I know how to do that, Katara replied. Just imagining the water moving slowly and getting solid should do the trick. But I can't control or bend the ice yet. Perfect, I replied. Your role is crucial. What's my role? Sokka asked. Bringing good luck, I said, shrugging. I didn't know how to answer without hurting his feelings, so I tried to cheer him up. I get it. I'm not much help. Sokka crossed his arms, turned his head, and snorted. You may turn into a big help with your boomerang skills, but they're not needed yet. I patted him on the shoulder. For now, let's eat. I'm starving. After the meeting with Katara, we had a delicious lunch. Sokka had grabbed his secret stash of sea fruits and dry wood to cook a nice meal for me to say goodbye. Well, the good news for him was that I'd be sticking around for a few more days. As the Fire Nation soldiers struggled, I asked Katara to accompany me to help. Sokka refused to let her go alone with me, not after that kiss, and insisted on coming with us. So, the three of us got into the boat. Why is Sokka so focused on me? It's not like I initiated the kiss. And I'm here to take down the enemy, not to mess with his sister. Though I've considered the idea for years. Well, I guess he's got a point. While I stood in the boat, Katara was behind me, pushing and providing the boat with momentum. After a half hour of fast travel, we spotted a huge Fire Nation ship. As we got closer, I noticed black smoke covering the sky. Man, they had used a lot of coal to melt the ice. When I jumped off the boat, I submerged under the water and swam toward the anchor. I saw that a large chunk of ice had melted, and only a thin layer of ice remained on the anchor. I popped my head above the water and waved at Katara. Since it was getting dark and we hadn't lit any torches, the people on the ship would have a hard time noticing us. Katara, who had been briefed on the plan, jumped into the water and followed my movements. I signaled to her to start freezing the water. To avoid freezing each other, we stayed close and pointed our hands forward. I created the first layer of ice around the anchor and chains, and Katara reinforced it. We tried to make the ice as large as possible. Freeze up to level 5. After holding our breath for over a minute, we surfaced and swam back to the boat. Are you done? Sokka asked. Katara, who was breathing heavily, replied, no. My breath, on the other hand, was calm. It seemed I'd gotten used to those icy cold morning showers. We still have a couple more rounds to go. Once they start feeling desperate, they'll either move on foot or cut the chains. But I'm not sure how a ship without an anchor would move. I don't think they'll do it. The risk is too high. Sokka shook his head. I'm not sure. They may leave someone to steer the ship, and they could always send soldiers to land. I don't want to know what they do for revenge. I replied, but they'll be exhausted by then, and we might have a chance to win. We could do something else. I smirked. So, what's the best course of action? Katara asked. I glanced at the ship. It didn't have a sail, but it did have a motor. My South Pole friends didn't seem to know how such a machine operated. I smiled and nodded as I folded my arms. This is going to be great. This is why I like ice. After waiting for a few hours until Sokka and Katara showed signs of sleepiness, I gave them instructions. Okay, guys, keep your distance. This might be a bit dangerous. Since the siblings were getting sleepy, the same could probably be said for the soldiers who had come from a far distance. There was a chance they'd leave someone on guard, but I doubted they would leave many. They were in the middle of nowhere, chasing after one man. It wasn't like that man was a one-man army to warrant extra guards. After Sokka gave me a thumbs up, I jumped into the water and swam toward the ship. Looking at it, I mused about how to climb the high metallic wall with no gaps in between. Then, an idea struck me. As water wrapped around my hands, I placed my left hand on the metal and froze the water slightly around the part in contact with the surface. I pulled myself up, placed my other hand, and froze the water around it. Then, I melted the ice around my left hand, raised it, and froze it again. I repeated the process several times and found it relatively easy to climb this way. I could have taken less time by throwing myself along with water onto the deck, but that would have alerted everyone. When I finally reached the deck, I opened my storage and pulled out a spear. I tiptoed toward the nearest chamber in the direction of the smoke. I assumed that was where the engine was. If I could freeze that, along with the coal, the Fire Nation soldiers would taste despair. Somehow, I felt a guilty pleasure imagining their reaction when they realized what had happened. Although they were on the bad guys' side, I wasn't entirely on the good guys' side myself. It was obvious. I didn't want this war to end for some higher cause. I just wanted my freedom guaranteed. As I got closer to the engine room, I noticed a soldier standing nearby, seemingly distracted. But as soon as I moved closer, he sensed my presence. His years of training must have paid off. Before he could react, I thrust my spear, a weapon capable of hunting fast-moving fish with a 40 to 50% success rate. A skill has been discovered. Hunting. Hunting up to level 2. Since fishing is the foundation of hunting, the skill with the lower level between the two will gain double experience until they match. Defeating a trained soldier. Plus 500 accumulated XP. A trained soldier but not a firebender. I deduced this based on the notification. As the soldier fell, I pulled out my spear. Then, an idea struck me. In the past few days, I'd tried storing fish. The system didn't allow storing living beings, but once they died, the fish became storable. Curious, I approached the fallen soldier and attempted to store him and his gear in my inventory. It worked. Another idea crossed my mind. Why not store the whole ship? I touched the ship and tried to move it, but the system displayed a message. Action isn't allowed. Storage capacity is too low. Try upgrading it. How the hell do I upgrade it? In response, a tab about storage appeared. Storage level 1, 20,000. It seemed I needed around 20,000 accumulated XP to upgrade my storage, which still wouldn't be enough to store an entire ship. Guess I should be glad I can loot the Fire Nation soldiers. Glad, huh? Since when did I start thinking of this as a game? I entered the engine room. I could see the fire burning, coal piled on the side, and other machinery. The engine was deep within the ship, and accessing it could result in burns. What if I throw water in quickly and freeze it? I opened my storage and took out a couple of leather barrels filled with drinkable water. I bent the water and moved it carefully. The heat caused it to start boiling, but I controlled the temperature using my freezing skill. The higher my freeze skill level, the colder the ice I could create. I directed the water into the engine room, froze it, and bent the ice in random directions. I wasn't entirely sure what I was doing, but I believed I was ruining their ship. Next, I turned to the coal. I wrapped it in water and froze it as well. Freeze level 5, 501,600. Satisfied, I exited the engine room. On the deck, I spotted a few scattered guards. Thinking about further sabotage, I decided to target their food supplies. I donned the gear of the soldier I had defeated. Luckily, the Fire Nation uniform covered most of the body. As long as I hid my tan face and blue eyes, I should avoid detection. Disguised, I wandered the ship until I found the kitchen. Inside, there was a locked storage room. Using waterbending, I manipulated water into the lock, froze it, and twisted it open. Inside were grains, meats, pre-cooked meals, and even canned food. I thought, lucky me for having storage. Feeling no remorse, only satisfaction, I stored all their food. They probably stole it from some poor Earth Kingdom village anyway. To me, these soldiers were already dead. After finishing my work, I climbed down the ship and met up with Sokka and Katara at the boat. We began rowing back toward the tribe's location. If this works, I can drive the Fire Nation soldiers to despair. Fighting them would be so much easier. The trip was mostly silent. None of us dared speak until we neared the tribe. So, what did you do? Sokka asked. I ruined their ship, I replied with a smile. Really? Does this mean you solved the problem and they aren't coming back? Katara smiled widely. That's awesome. You don't have to leave. Her delight reminded me of that goodbye kiss, and my heart skipped a beat. I kept my face neutral. I wasn't smooth with women, but I wasn't clueless enough to ignore what a kiss meant. Still, I couldn't talk about it in front of her brother. Well, maybe. I need some time to think before making a decision, I replied. I'm only human, and I need to reflect before I risk making a mistake. But deep down, I felt I might have to leave. Bigger troubles could be on the way. Okay, you sound like the grandmas from the tribe, Sokka grumbled. True, Katara agreed. I crossed my arms. What can I say? Wisdom comes with age. You realize I'm the oldest one here. Sokka said. If you multiply your age by 0, it's still 0, I teased. What's that supposed to mean? Sokka asked, looking at his hands as if trying to count. How can you multiply anything by 0? He created a slit with his index and thumb. He then moved his other hand's middle finger in and out. How does that even make sense? Anyway, I interrupted, resisting the urge to chuckle. The battle with the Fire Nation isn't over. They might come here on foot. We'll wait 2 days and see. Cow woke early, ready to enjoy one of the world's finest coffees, made from beans only found in the south of the Fire Nation. The last couple of days had been exhausting, and the fact that they had crossed an entire ocean to reach here made them even more tired. It was all thanks to one waterbender fool. At least coffee can ease my mind. Once I kill that fool, I'll get my special 100-year-old drink. I had kept it for a special occasion, like getting promoted, but I swear it will taste even better after killing that fool. Cow thought, enjoying his sadistic ideas. By now, the ice around the anchor should have melted. When he stepped out of his cabin, he found the soldiers staring at the ship with pale faces. He stood at the edge of the ship and looked down at the men on the land. What's going on? Cao asked. Captain, Dud, the man was barely able to form a sentence, looking confused about where to start. Dud what? Yelled Cao. The ice is back, whined one of the soldiers, who was known to be well composed. That fool. He must have come back at night. Said Cao. Does he think we're easy targets? We'll cut off the anchor and leave the rest to our ancestors' souls and fate. Does that asshole waterbender think we're easy to push around? I'm crazier than him. About that, a soldier came from behind the captain. Cao turned around and realized he was talking to the one responsible for the ship's maintenance. All of our coal is gone. And when I tried to use normal wood, I found that the engine has been damaged beyond repair. We can't move. The maintenance soldier said, his tone full of despair. Cao, boiling with anger, looked at him with wide eyes. The soldier didn't repeat what he had said. Cao felt like it was a nightmare. He grabbed the maintenance guy by the arm guards and shook him. Wait, you just didn't have breakfast. Once you eat well and warm up, you'll figure it out. He shook his head. There's a lot of ice inside. I could see cuts in the pipes, and there's a leak. Unfortunately, it's beyond repair. We can forge a new one, right? Cao asked. We have blacksmiths on the ship. Not possible in this icy land. The maintenance guy shook his head. Cao laughed forcefully and hit his arm. We'll figure out a solution. For now, ignite the fire and we'll eat. About that. The maintenance guy rubbed his own cheek. Don't tell me, Cao said, dreading the next words. All of our stored food is gone as well. All that's left are the snacks the soldiers kept under their beds. In his long life, Cao had seen despair in the eyes of both young and old. He had been a fierce warrior, and he knew how much the enemies of his glorious nation had suffered. But for the first time in his life, Cao was the one feeling despair. This is what I was doing to people. He looked at his soldiers with sad eyes. Bring me a map. How long will it take us to get there on foot? They weren't waterbenders, and they couldn't swim fast without risking being attacked by the monsters in the sea. They also didn't have the high cold tolerance of waterbenders, nor could they predict the weather. The only way was to travel around to the water tribe by foot. We guessed you'd ask that, Captain. It'll take about 2 to 3 days. 3 days. No food. Cao felt like going back to the Fire Nation, hugging his mom, and crying. Let's not forget how heavy the armor is, remarked one soldier. Somewhere else. I was away from Sokka and Katara, enjoying my spoils. I couldn't show them the food or anything I had. I couldn't explain the existence of the storage. I couldn't just say that a spirit had given it to me. But I guess when I go back to attack the Fire Nation soldiers, when they're at their hungriest and weakest, I could make an excuse by bringing some food back to the tribe. I looked at the fire coming from the coal. Above it was a pan with a steak. I was waiting for the right moment to flip it. The rich aroma filled my nose, making me salivate. Man, it had been a lifetime since I had some nice grilled meat. Yummy. Yummy. The excitement washed away any small amount of guilt or sorrow I felt for the Fire Nation soldiers. Thinking about the Fire Nation soldiers, I believed they should be in despair. What would I do if I had no food, no coal, and my ship was broken? The most logical thing would be to take boats and fill them with soldiers. But that wouldn't be enough for the whole crew. And if I were them, I wouldn't try fighting a waterbender lurking in the water. Plus, there are other dangers. Would they risk it? The other way is the safer route. They could walk to the southern tribe. It'll take 2 days or more if they don't take breaks. They may freeze to death. No. They can warm themselves up with fire, I thought. I rubbed my nose, thinking about 2 strategies. First, I can block them in the water. Second, I can hunt them in the wild. There's no need to hurry. They are trained soldiers with experience fighting other benders, but once drained, I'll have a higher chance. Also, I wonder how to use the accumulated experience. Using the points I have wouldn't increase my waterbending. Maybe my freeze or hunting skills. But what I'm really curious about is Kai bending. It makes waterbending easier. I wonder what else it could do. Using 600 accumulated points. Kai bending up to level 4, 300 800ths. Plus the ability to infuse Kai into your body. Increases power by 20%. I looked at my hands and used my new muscle memory, moving a mysterious energy with my mind. It felt as if I had grown a new limb. My hands suddenly felt tingly and hot. Kai bending plus 2 XP. I guess I found a way to train Kai bending. I just can't use it too much right now because I have fire benders to watch out for. This form, it increases my power, but it's way more exhausting than waterbending. I can use it in short intervals to save energy. On the other hand, I waved my hand, and water flew out of the cup. The response time for waterbending has improved slightly. Slight improvements can add up. Interesting, I thought to myself. A full day had passed since Ryak had made the fire soldiers taste despair. Although he had no previous battle experience, he still gained an advantage by using his natural environment and stealing food and coal from the soldiers. That may have been cruel, but he was human, and for that, he needed to finish them off. Those invaders had to know that they would only receive what they gave. If they wanted to live happily, they could stay out of other people's homes. Sokka was on a boat, holding a boomerang, guarding the sea. On the other hand, Katara was standing behind him. His sister may not have been a trained bender, but she had been bending since she was 12 years old and could use some good tricks while in the water. But Ryak seems to be more talented, and she seems to be into him. I should keep guard. I don't want to end up an uncle at this age, but he can protect her though. At the same time, he seems to want to leave and wants us to look for a bald monk. Sokka had been doubtful about the existence of a monk. But the fact that Ryak had gained bending and linked it to spirits gave him credibility. He rubbed his head, feeling a headache. It was such a tough job being an older brother and fighting the Fire Nation soldiers at the same time. But as the oldest male here, he had the duty to protect the tribe. Anyway, what's Ryak doing? He had left with no food and walked the other way. I was walking alone. The ice was everywhere. The land was completely white. It was almost impossible to see. That's why, before coming here, I picked up an old white coat made from the fur of a white polar bear that one of the old ladies had. Her husband had it in the past, and she gave it to me when I asked everyone if they had white clothes. This should work, I thought to myself. The only things I could spot around were the black penguins and some rare species that couldn't be compared to animals from Earth. On the other hand, one wouldn't be able to spot a bear here, if there even was one. With a spear in my hand, I was gliding with my feet on the ice. I used my waterbending to push myself and give myself momentum, then relaxed and focused on my balance. After a few hours, I was getting hungry and cold. So, I opened my small storage and grabbed a griller and set it up. I then placed some coal, lit it up, and placed some meat on it. I stretched my legs and thought about whether I was doing something inhuman. I'd stolen my enemy's food, destroyed their ship, and taken away their warmth source. But on the other hand, they were firebenders. Just breathing air wouldn't allow them to make fire out of thin air. So, I didn't do them harm. Besides, in my previous life, I'd heard that fasting puts a person in a state of autophagy, where they turn harmful and diseased cells into protein, fixing the body and prolonging life. It also fixes dopamine levels and regrows the mind. They might be able to feel joy after being so numb for so long. Too bad they won't live to see the benefits of how kind I was to them, I said as I started chewing on the food. My stomach was happy with me. That's what mattered. Anyway, my attempt to camp and eat didn't go unnoticed by the monsters. A couple of bear dogs came rushing toward me. They were so big and large that they could chew my head off in one bite. The first thing I did was circle around myself. The ice beneath me turned into water, pushing me up a few meters in height. I then froze the water below me, turning it into a small ice pillar that I sat above. The bears circled around me, then went to the meat. Okay. Minecraft Iron Golem killing strategy, I said, waving my hand slightly, and the ice turned into water that wrapped around my hand and reshaped itself into a spear-like ice weapon. I knew these animals. Korra had one of them as a pet. But these dog bears were feral animals, non-tameable, and loved to eat anything that had meat. Using my hunting skill, I aimed at the first bear and threw the spear. SPSH. The spear pierced the back of its neck, but it didn't kill it. Hunting up to level 3. That was amazing, considering that I hadn't killed the monster yet. The bear that had been chewing on the food lifted its head slightly. When it noticed the shape of its friend, it glared at me angrily. It came to the pillar and started pushing the ice. Since one bear was busy with its injury, I could take care of the other without worrying about my back. I melted the ice pillar I was standing on when I jumped. A wave of water fell on the bear. And before it flattened on the ground, I froze the water, trapping the bear inside it. Polar dog bear was defeated. Plus 750 accumulated experience. Mercilessly, I bent the ice inside, breaking the body of the frozen bear and using the ice shards to throw them at the other injured bear. The shards were cold, but small and not strong enough to break its tough skin. Yet, they got inside its eyes and softer parts. Taking advantage of the momentum, I sent a waterfall to surround the bear. Then, I froze it. Bending the ice, I spun the ball until its head was off. Plus 750 accumulated experience. I looked at the broken bodies. One of them could surely be a nice meal for the tribe. But there were more important things to think about. The monsters I'd killed had provided me with 1,500 experience points that I could use. Supporting my chin with my hand, I wondered where I could allocate those points. In the coming battle, waterbending would be the key to victory. But Kai bending also made bending easier and increased my physical power, which I could use when I had to use a weapon. It might even give me cooler tricks when I leveled it up. Forget it. It's a bending battle against an exhausted enemy. If I get a few of them killed, I could use the points I want to level up whatever I want. With that, I made up my mind. Waterbending up to level 6. Captain Cow was feeling strange as he and his soldiers walked through the ice. Unlike what he had expected, he didn't feel tired or hungry. Instead, he felt more energized and could walk faster. Not only that, but when he turned his head, he saw his soldiers in the same state. The cold didn't bother them anymore, nor did the hunger. At this pace, they could arrive at the southern path in less than 2 days. Which meant only a few hours remained. This is strange. Guys, do you feel hungry? Asked one soldier. Cow tried to hear what they were saying, trying to understand the state they were in. No. You? He asked another. Actually, I feel better, said someone. I felt strange. Despite the second day of not eating, my bowel movements are perfect. I pooped a lot. Cow rolled his eyes. There it was. That one person who always talked about shit and stuff. Anyway, we should save our energy, said Captain Cow. Try not to talk unless it's necessary. There are enough dog bears and polar bears here. Yes, Captain, they answered in unison. Tonight, we feast, yelled Captain Cow, looking at a couple of defeated bears that his soldiers had struggled to take down. They had found them on the way. Despite using firebending on them, the bears had high vigor and could push through the fire, biting the nearest soldier. Even the armor didn't do anything against the pressure applied by the bite. Luckily, they ambushed the bears with spears and took them down. Now, they cut them into parts, and they were about to cook the meat. There was no need for coal or wood. Although it made the food delicious, they still had their firebending, and they could make a barbecue. The soldiers soon prepared cooked meat. And they sat down to eat, eating to their heart's content. Cow patted his stomach, feeling full all of a sudden. At the same time, he felt drowsy and the desire to fall asleep. When he looked around, he saw the soldiers in the same state. It seemed that when they saw the food, they were unable to hold themselves back. So, if you take a long time without eating, it's better to eat bit by bit, thought Cow. In the desert, if those who had been thirsty for a long time drank like they weren't thirsty, they'd die. Well, I guess some stomach aches aren't a problem. Someone keep guard. We'll be taking a break. Cow closed his eyes slightly, trying to savor the moment of peace. Yes, Captain, a soldier, despite being tired, tried to reply vigorously. Suddenly, a ball of water covered his head before freezing into ice. Cow opened his eyes wide. The adrenaline pumped through his system, and he stood up. He felt immense pain in his guts, but he unsheathed his weapon and looked left and right. The waterbender is here. Keep the formation. He screamed. His men groaned but kept trying to hold the formation. Shit. I just ate. My stomach. Arg. I'll kill this waterbender. But where the fool is he? Cow asked, looking left and right. He must be wearing some kind of white fur coat to hide himself. Suddenly, a thin yet large amount of water rose, creating a thin wave. The firebenders destroyed it easily, despite the water having an advantage over fire. A huge amount of steam rose, covering their vision. Cow raised his guard, expecting that the waterbender would sneak in at any time. Don't let your guard down, ordered Cow as he felt pain in his stomach, but his face showed nothing. Don't laugh. Don't laugh. Just as soon as I kill a couple of them, I'll run away, level up some skills, and then come back for another attack. I was wearing armor from the Fire Nation that I had taken the day I killed the guard. At the same time, I was taking my stance, looking for the waterbender with them. As my eyelids tightened, my eyes darted left and right, scanning my new teammates for any blind spots. My target was the captain. If a normal soldier gave me 500 experience points, and a normal firebender gave me 1000, then what about the captain? Anyway, I had gained 1000 accumulated experience points, which wasn't enough to level up my waterbending. I quickly checked my system. Skill trees. Waterbending 6, 153,200. Kai bending 3, 104 Skills. Hunting 3. Fishing 4. Freeze 4. Accumulated experience. 1000. Well, there were a few skills I could level up twice in a row, such as hunting and fishing. I could also level up Kai bending. Since I was planning to use hit and run tactics, it might be better to level up Kai bending to increase my speed. Kai bending up to level 4, 0800. Kai bending effect can be applied to the whole body. Boost speed, power, and bending by 30%. Hunting up to level 4, 0800. Freeze up to level 5, 01600. I couldn't afford to dwell on deep thoughts while in the middle of the enemy, so I needed to strike quickly and run away faster. I had to admit that it was a shame I couldn't level up Kai bending 2 levels in a row. Anyway, I took the risk and pointed my spear forward, looking in a random direction. The waterbender. I yelled urgently. As everyone turned, I thrust my spear toward the captain's head. He didn't have time to react, and my spear claimed his head. That's hunting level 4 for you. The odds of immobilizing a target are 99.99%. Just as everyone was surprised by my action, and before they could make a decision or react, I waved my spear from side to side, creating a wave of water from the icy ground, turning it into a thin water wall that froze into ice. Ding! Killing a fire bender captain. Plus 4000 accumulated XP. Without hesitation, I ran and jumped onto the ice, waving my hand to make my feet glide on the ice, which turned into water, giving me an advantage in speed. The ice wall didn't hold, but I had a head start. Fire projectiles rained down on me, but I managed to get away with only one fire projectile hitting me on the shoulder, which struck my arm guard. Once I reached drier land, I channeled my Kai around my body and felt a 30% speed boost, which gave me an extra advantage. Just as I made some distance, my armor vanished into thin air, revealing me in white fur attire. Now it was time to camouflage. Luckily, I could store my clothes instantly. While running, I didn't erase my footprints on purpose. When I thought I had run enough, I started erasing my traces while hiding somewhere nearby. If I were lucky, the remaining fire soldiers would follow my steps and come here. When they realized they had lost me, it would be the best time to strike. Anyway, I patted my shoulder, feeling a slight sensation of burn. I bet my skin was red by now. This level of pain was something I could handle. Ignoring it, I decided to prepare myself for round 2, or was it 3? I didn't know, honestly. But I liked the hit and run tactic. Waterbending up to level 7, 06,400. While waiting, I lowered my coat and looked over my shoulder. Fair enough, there was a burning mark. I needed to cool it. I waved my hand, and a water ball rose from the ground. I controlled its heat, making it colder by channeling my Kai slowly. A pleasant sensation ran through my body. It was cold yet comfortable. When I looked at the water, I found it glowing with a blue light. I opened my eyes widely, realizing what had happened. I had just used a healing technique that waterbenders, especially the females from the North Pole, would usually use. Pushing my neck further backward, I saw that the red mark had vanished. There wasn't even a scar left. Adding healing skill to the skill tree, waterbending. As I reached level 7 in waterbending, I realized that not only was the experience requirement exponential, but so was the growth rate. I felt that it was worth killing a captain. With a slight wave from my feet, my body smoothly slid on the ice. But I didn't have time to admire my power up when there was a squad trying to gain the upper hand on me. I reached a nearby spot and hid my presence, waiting for the firebenders and soldiers to arrive. Seeing that I had plenty of experience points left, I poured them into the hunting skill. Hunting up to level 5. As I waited, I used waterbending to reshape the water into spears, before freezing them. What I noticed when using ice spears instead of real ones was that I could make the spears float. I didn't have to make physical contact to throw them. I realized that I could combine 3 skills like this: Kai bending to increase my physical power, waterbending to enhance my throwing and ease, and hunting skill to improve accuracy. Mental note. In the future, I'll have to learn how to throw more than one spear at a time. But for now, I won't try it. The battlefield isn't a place to experiment, but to show the results of training. As I waited, I resisted the urge to grab a snack and chew on it. But I decided to be patient. Just as everyone was approaching, even though I didn't hear anything, I could sense ripples, as if the ice was being stomped on. My senses perked. A few minutes later, a bunch of soldiers were approaching, following my footsteps. The fire soldiers were confused as the footsteps had halted. They had lost the track of the man who had just assassinated their captain and one of their friends. To say that they were frustrated was an understatement. For many hours, they had been working hard to defrost the ice that had trapped their ship. And just when they were about to succeed, they were faced with despair. Their ship had been ruined. The food and the coal had vanished, leaving them with no choice but to travel a long distance on foot, with little to no food. And when they finally had food, they were ambushed. Their stomachs hadn't even finished digesting the food when they were attacked. They hadn't been trained for a situation like this, and with no captain around, they didn't know what to do other than to kill the waterbender and punish him. Before he could even escape, they traced him here. Be careful, guys. The trace ends here. He led us here and erased his footsteps on purpose. Don't go astray. Shouldn't we divide up? If we stay in the same place, we'd be an easy target. But if we don't stay together, we could be easily ambushed. Together, we can watch each other's backs. Man, this idea sucks. What do you know? You've only been serving on the battlefield for a year now. Excuse you. I was an honor student, unlike you. Everyone, shut up. We have a fool to kill. The soldiers' morale was low. With no one to lead them, their formation was a mess. And while some argued, the sound of a projectile cutting through the air echoed. An ice spear pierced through the neck of one of them. Just as the soldiers realized it, another spear hit one of them. Luckily, it landed in the middle of his chest plate. But unfortunately for the soldier, taking it in the armor didn't negate the impact, and he felt unbearable pain. What kind of throwing power is that? Said the soldier, blood dripping from his chin. The soldiers raised their swords, and the firebenders ignited flames above their hands. Several meters away, Ryak had many spears on the ground. Using Kai bending the moment he threw the spears increased his power dramatically, and switching it off helped conserve energy. I had no idea, he thought, watching the soldiers assume a defensive posture. One of the ice spears floated and came to his hand. He threw it. The soldier he aimed at noticed and raised his sword to protect his head. Ryak, anticipating this, took a bending stance and lowered his hand. The ice spear changed its trajectory, and instead of hitting the head, it went past the sword and pierced through the neck. Killing a soldier. Plus 500 XP. Non-benders are worthless compared to firebenders, and firebenders are worthless compared to captains. I guess I should look for the vice captain or something. With that thought in mind, Ryak began sniping the soldiers. But it seemed that killing a couple of them had given away his location, or at least, the general direction. They divided and ran toward him. It makes it easier to hunt them down if they get closer, he thought. And luckily, he didn't lack any ammo. Being in an icy terrain was his biggest advantage. He threw another ice spear, and playfully made it change direction to catch someone off guard, killing him on the spot. He repeated this a few more times until they caught up to him. Hunting up to level 6. And when they were close enough to shoot at him, his genius gave him an idea, to get further away. He used his waterbending to slide away. Being in the South Pole, especially during the sunless season, gave him a huge advantage over the firebenders. They were nerfed by the cold, and the weather wasn't in their favor. On the other hand, he had water all around him. On land, firebenders had an advantage over waterbenders, who usually kept their ammo in bottles. But here, it was a different story. As the Fire Nation soldiers were about 10 meters away, Ryuk didn't run away immediately. Instead, he took a risk. What made him take it was the fact that his waterbending skill had leveled up, and he was more comfortable using it in combat. He slammed his hand on the ground, raising a small wave of water and pushing it forward with momentum. A few soldiers tried to avoid it, but fewer succeeded, and the water froze around them. He twisted his hand, twisting the ice and breaking the bones of those trapped inside it. The others caught up to me, and a couple of fire streams rose, which I easily blocked with the help of the ice. Dash 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 dash. See you later, losers, I mocked them before gliding across the ice, flickering away. On my way, I saw a few wild animals and smirked. The scent of blood must have attracted them. To these animals, blood wasn't just blood, it indicated the existence of a nearby food source. After crossing a considerable distance, I took my time to wisely use my points. Thanks to the sniping, defense, and playing with the water, I had gained a massive amount of experience in waterbending, which wasn't enough to level up. But with the points I had earned from killing the soldiers, I now had just enough to level it up. I poured all of my experience points into waterbending, leaving me with 0 points. Skill trees. Waterbending 8 212 thousandths. Kai bending 5 104 hundredths. Skills. Hunting 6. Fishing 4. Freeze 4. Accumulated experience. 0. It had been a stressful day, but it had earned me an honest paycheck. I had gained a massive increase in my waterbending skill. If I had trained for months, I might have reached this level. Just to test how skilled I had become, I waved my hands, and I could move the water with ease. Even mental effort played a role along with the body motions. The water flowed around my arms, taking the shape of an octopus arm. When I moved it, it was easy to control. It was easy to stretch and bind. I felt that with more practice, I could create a second hand. I would no longer have to stand up to grab a bottle of water or food nearby. But on second thought, I had a storage, so this new skill couldn't make my life much easier. Okay, later, I'll practice turning the tip into a blade. Or better yet, I could make arms around my shoulders and back and learn how to use them. But fighting in that style would require a high level of agility. Man, I wish the system could increase my physical stats. But I guess I'll work with what I have. I started bending the ice beneath me, creating several ice spears. At the same time, I wondered if I had to use the hunting skill only with a spear. Couldn't I use it with a boomerang like Sokka? But again, the battlefield wasn't a place for testing. Anyways, the firebenders didn't catch up to me. I could hear their footsteps, and their numbers seemed to be reducing. I smirked, thinking that I knew what they were planning. Instead of being an easy target, they decided to disperse and try to catch me off guard from all directions, cutting off my escape routes. But unbeknownst to them, I was now ready to fight, thanks to my increased waterbending skills. I took a step forward and thrust both of my arms. 2 spears shot up from the ground, hitting 2 of the soldiers who had gotten closer. They surely had their guards up, but because I was super focused, I could change the direction of the spears to hit them where their guard was lowered. One of them had a good reaction speed and managed to dodge, but the other wasn't so lucky. I didn't run away but instead charged at them, water wrapping around my arms and turning into whips. I swung the whips at the nearest soldier. Just as I gained high momentum, I controlled the water at the tip, freezing it and reshaping it into a blade. Unfortunately, the blade wasn't very sharp, but it was effective as it left a deep cut on the soldier's neck. At the same time, I felt heat on my face. Without thinking, I made the whips wrap around my face, welcoming a fire stream that hit me there. The force of the fire made me take a couple of steps back. The soldier who had shot me was above me, raising his leg to perform an axe kick while fire surrounded his calf. I raised my arms, and water rose from the ground, surrounding the firebender before freezing around him. Idiot. Never fight a waterbender on the ocean or icy ground. Somehow, whenever someone stepped on the ice, I felt something, like a ripple. It wasn't hearing, but it was some information my waterbending gave to my brain. It alerted me that someone was behind me. When I turned, I saw a spear being thrust at me. My heart skipped a beat as I channeled my Kai and moved my hand to catch the spear. I pulled the weapon along with the wielder. As the soldier came into view, I gave him a headbutt to the chin while pouring my Kai into my forehead, causing his bones to break. As the soldier fell, I panted and quickly turned my head left and right. Those soldiers were dispersed in every direction, and I needed to guard my back. According to my calculations, only around 10 remain, I thought to myself, rubbing my chin. I had taken down half the unit by myself, and now, I wasn't backing down. Stretching my arm, I snapped my fingers, creating a barrier of water around me before freezing it, leaving only a small opening for my head. I looked left and right. A few fireballs rained on the barrier, giving away the location of the firebenders. Seeing that I had a few points to spare, I opened my system and leveled up my hunting skill. Hunting up to level 7. I created an opening in the barrier. As I formed a few other water spears, I increased my strength with Kai bending and threw them in the direction the fire came from, adding my waterbending to enhance the thrust power of the spears. Freeze up to level 5. I ignored the notification and focused on the notifications for dead soldiers. I kept throwing the spears, and sure enough, I killed 3 more. The battle continued like this until another 4 soldiers were gone. I had gained around 5,000 accumulated points, given that I had mostly killed benders. Other than that, I had been waiting for the survivors, hiding in my little shell, promising myself that as soon as they appeared, I would use the ground advantage and freeze them. But as I waited, I found myself losing track of time. Minutes, hours, several of them passed. The ice dome wasn't attacked. I didn't know if they were waiting for me to come out, if they had escaped, or if they wanted me to think they had escaped toward the tribe, only to lure me there. Anyways, what should I do? If they had somehow escaped, I should hunt them down before a word of a waterbender gets out. The fire soldiers were tired of seeing their friends being murdered cruelly and coldly. They wanted to take down the waterbender who had been using guerrilla warfare to reduce their numbers, starting from their captain to the strongest ones. Just as he had used ice spears to pierce through their defenses, they realized that they were no match for him. Not to mention, ice was everywhere. It was like fighting a waterbender in the ocean, which led them to the conclusion that they couldn't defeat him. He could kill them and use the ice to escape in the worst case. In the best case, they might kill him, but they would pay a very heavy price. Listen, said a firebender, the oldest of those who remained alive. He turned to the youngest one, holding his shoulder. Yes, father, replied the young firebender, fear burning in his eyes. You must run away to the main ship, take a small one, and head back to the Earth Kingdom. Find General Zhao and report back. But, father, we can kill the waterbender, said the son, not wanting to abandon his only father, tears welling in his eyes. This is no time for emotions. Remember your training. If we all die here in vain, then there will be no honor. If you make it back, you'll have done a great service, replied the father. The other firebenders nodded. One of them said, go back. If we win, we'll catch up. If not, then, please, tell my wife I loved her. Another one said, tell my daughter that I was lost somewhere. I don't want her to miss me. As for me, I don't have a family. Tisk, at least I won't have to use my hand every day, said one of the soldiers, earning glares from everyone. This was a heartfelt moment, and you just ruined it. Do you always have to do that? Ha ha ha, I couldn't resist the urge. Anyways, son, go. We'll buy you time. After hours of keeping my guard up against any potential traps, I stepped out of my ice barrier. I walked across the ice, slowly looking around. I tried to look for footprints and traces. I glanced at the dead bodies, trying to match the foot size with the footprints. Sure enough, most of them were different. There's a lead suggesting a man is missing. His footsteps are light, so he's quite skinny. I can assume that he's young, given that he's not as bulky as the older soldiers, meaning he probably hasn't finished his training yet. I walked around, tracing some footprints outside the battlefield. Sure enough, there was a long trail showing someone walking in the opposite direction of everyone else. Instead of running, I bent the ice to push myself forward, gliding smoothly. I hoped I might catch up. But I didn't. At one point, the footsteps vanished. The fool erased his tracks. But how? He wasn't a waterbender. I knew it was possible, but it should be hard for that young soldier. At the same time, a young firebender sat on top of a polar bear dog, which was running for its life with the firebender's ignited hand near its face. The smart animal seemed to understand the consequences of attacking the human and ran in one direction. Whenever it slowed, the firebender would bring his hand closer. Whenever it hastened, he would pull his hand away. After erasing his tracks, the young firebender thought about how the waterbender had tricked them with his footsteps and guided them into a trap. So, he thought, why not do the same? He could lead the waterbender to where the polar bears were, then erase his tracks, use a bear as a fast ride, and escape home. It had been a few hours, and thanks to exhausting the bear, he had crossed what would have taken him days in just a few hours. Those animals were surely useful. I need to get out as soon as possible. Father, don't die. Or else I'll take revenge. The firebender suppressed his tears as he kicked the bear. Everyone he had been living with and considered family was either brutally murdered or waiting to be killed, all thanks to a rebellious waterbender. The son of a fool is lucky. I looked at the sea, at the horizon. The footsteps had ended, but the firebender was nowhere to be seen. Tracking someone in the water is so difficult, as anyone could be lost at sea easily, let alone tracking someone. Even if I went through the ocean to look for him, I could easily lose my way and end up on a random island, wasting time before eventually coming back. By then, the firebender would have arrived at the Earth Kingdom, where many of their nation's forces resided. Not only that, but they would seek revenge and may send many troops to the South Pole. I may have been Josh in my previous life, but that doesn't erase the fact that I had lived for 17 years here and had some attachment. Katara could also suffer and get killed, as could Sokka. I squeezed my brain, trying to come up with a genius idea. I wasn't a man with a very high IQ, but I knew I could figure something out. I could wait here and fight any firebenders until the Avatar is awakened if we ever find him. I could go to the Earth Kingdom and try to find the firebender. I was certain I could arrive there before he did. In the worst case scenario, I could start attacking the Fire Nation troops to announce my existence and draw the Fire Nation's attention away from the South Pole, ensuring everyone here would be safe. At the same time, I could hunt for wild beasts and accumulate experience, which would make it much easier for me to fight anyone who tried to chase me down. And let's not forget, being chased was like receiving free experience points. All I had to do was avoid biting off more than I could chew. I held my head in both hands, not liking having to make a difficult decision. But the decisions that are hardest to make are the ones that have the most impact on one's life. Ryak. Katara waved her hand at me. She and Sokka were about to run toward me after I had come back to the tribe, with 2 large bags on my back. I raised my palm at them, indicating how tired I was. I had just finished dealing with a bunch of firebenders. I had even gone to check on the location of their ship, and not a single firebender was there. On the way, I had seen the footprints of a polar bear dog. Yep. It seemed that they had escaped using the bear, and that's why I couldn't find them by tracing human footprints. So, what happened? Sokka asked me, looking me in the eyes. You see, I began, all of the firebenders have been annihilated. The problem is, one of them managed to escape. Or, to be more precise, the others acted as bait while sending the other to the north. Sokka sighed in relief. Phew. That wasn't bad. Seeing your expression, I thought the worst might have happened. You're fine, and that's what matters. I shook my head, looking at Katara, who too had yet to realize the full consequences. The 2 of them, the 3 of us, had lived in this place for almost 2 decades. Our job was simply to watch over the elders and the children. Other than that, it was a peaceful life without much struggle. It would be obvious that they don't know what kind of life exists out there in other continents, let alone realize what it would mean for a firebender to escape. What do you think that firebender would do, Sokka? I asked him, since he was the oldest. Go home, tell them not to come here and mess with us, he said. Let me think. Let's say you're a firebender, and one of the guys who died here was your sister. What would you do in that case? I asked. Obviously, I would come here to take revenge, Sokka grimaced, his tone becoming harsher. I smirked. Bingo. That's exactly what's going to happen. But instead of coming alone like you're thinking, everyone would gather a large army. Maybe a fleet to take us down. It's needless to say that the tribe and their lives aren't as important to them as they are to us. Katara put her hands over her mouth. That makes sense. What do we do? Should I gather everyone and prepare to escape? To where? I asked. This is the South Pole. The deeper parts are so cold and stormy that it's not suitable to live. Not to mention, we wouldn't be able to gather food easily since it's far from the ocean. So, you're saying we're doomed in any case? Sokka thought for a moment. You two can leave the South Pole for somewhere else. I'll take care of the tribe and see if there's a place to move them to. Sokka, you can't do that. Katara scolded him. I can, he insisted. You two, can you shut up for a second? I interjected. Since I've thought about the consequences, it's obvious that I've already thought of a way to minimize the damage. Huh, really? Sokka asked. What is it, then? I'll go alone after the firebender, I explained. There are 3 possible outcomes. 1. The firebender dies at the hands of sea monsters. 2. I meet the firebender before he reaches the Fire Nation military bases and kill him. 3. We get exposed as having a crazy waterbender. In the first 2 cases, I'll come back here. In the last case, I'll cause trouble in the Earth Kingdom and announce myself. This way, they'll focus their forces on me. I had thought about the possibility of them sending troops to kidnap people here to force me out. But that would put their own people in danger, which meant I'd have to chase them down. It wasn't as bad as I had made it sound. I could gain experience points thanks to them. Anyways, I said, placing the 2 bags in front of the siblings. One bag contains meat, grain, and other types of canned food. The other contains coal and cooking materials. Learn how to use them. It doesn't take a genius to figure them out. Katara placed her hand on my shoulder. Ryak, it's so dangerous to go alone. I'll go with you. Yeah. As if I'd let my younger sister go alone with a young man, Sokka refused. I'll be coming too. I chuckled and shook my head. Sorry, guys, but there's that vision provided by the spirits. You still need to meet a bald male who claims to be the avatar in one of the icebergs. Are you being serious? Katara snapped. We've been looking for him for some time now. And he's not even remotely here. To be honest, I had thought about what she said many times. As the person who had been swimming in icy cold water every morning for the last month, I was the one who had lost the most hope of the Avatar's appearance. What if he never appeared? We would be doomed for sure, unless I took the risk myself. I may not be as powerful as someone who could access the Avatar state, or maybe even like Azula for now. But experience points were my hope. If I could gain them endlessly, I should be able to power up endlessly. Though leveling up became slower and harder, the Earth continent had a variety of life forms and dangerous monsters that should be worth a lot of experience points. If I could benefit from that, I could even unlock bloodbending. When I reached that level, I swore I'd break into the Fire Lord's palace and twist his neck. After that, even if the Sozin Comet came, without a leader, the Fire Nation wouldn't stand a chance. 1 month, I said. Just wait for 1 month. If he doesn't appear, you guys come and try to meet me in the Earth Kingdom. Whether the firebender would reach the other side of the land, I would still have left. I needed the valuable experience points. Also, I was dying to have a hot shower. The stench of blood was strong on me. How would we find you? Katara crossed her arms and pouted. Don't worry. I'll be famous by then, I said. Knowing this conversation might take a long time, I decided to do what was necessary and then leave. Also, Katara, I've discovered an interesting trick when it comes to waterbending. I said, waving my arms in a specific way. Water rose from the land and formed 2 tentacles around my arms. Wanna learn the basic moves before I leave? My Kai is already exhausted, I thought as I got on my boat and opened the sail, the wind pushing it in the direction of the north. Moreover, I managed to increase its speed by bending the water around the boat. At the same time, I received occasional sensory inputs that I had yet to fully interpret. Maybe fish or something were nearby. I couldn't get used to this new sensation. But I either needed to train it or level up to gain its benefits. Turning my head toward the location of the tribe, I found that it was no longer in my sight. At this rate, I should reach the other side quickly, I thought to myself, stopping the motion of my arms and letting the boat move with the momentum it had gathered. At the same time, I scanned the horizon. The ocean was quite violent today, with quick waves raging from different directions. They weren't huge, but they were definitely fast. I had flown above the sea a couple of times. Since I had been alone, I was enjoying myself. Whenever I spotted an incoming wave, I would hold onto the sail, bend the water to boost my boat, and glide above the wave, flying. What? A man can work and have fun at the same time. But that didn't make me forget about the firebender I was chasing. He's not a waterbender, so he couldn't have dealt with this kind of weather. At the same time, the sea is vast. He may be in a different spot depending on the angle he used to travel, I thought. At any rate, I had to leave the South Pole whether that soldier had escaped or not. There are a lot of experience points to gain and many monsters to fight. But that's not entirely to my advantage, even with the chances to gain experience. When you think about it, waterbenders are very powerful in their environment. But on land, where water is limited, I wouldn't pose as much of a threat as I do here. Unfortunately, I had a solution for a problem like that. I looked down between my legs. The last resort. Imagine killing someone with a piss spear. I was only a few hours at sea, and I was already having funny ideas. I knew that I had a storage to hold a water barrel or two. But what if I didn't? Shaking my head, I decided to focus on what was in front of me. The more I advanced, the warmer the weather became. I could finally see the daylight, the sun, shining brightly. My body felt so hot that I was forced to remove my coat and travel with my upper body exposed. After a bit of time, I reached a small, isolated island. I decided to take a break, as it was approaching night. I wasn't familiar with the stars in this world, so I wouldn't be able to navigate to the Earth Kingdom at night. But during the day, depending on the position of the sun, I'd be fine as long as I headed north. I rested for the night. Now that I think about it, how would a soldier without a navigator survive alone on the ocean? It may sound like an absurd idea. But if you think about it, immigrants have performed more impressive feats on more violent seas. At last, I said to myself as I spotted land. I hadn't found the firebender, but that wasn't important. There was a high chance that he had died. In case that hadn't happened, I knew what I would have to do. But still, it would bother me that he escaped and may have survived somewhere. I made it onto land. It had taken me a couple of days to reach here, thanks to the winds and waterbending. I could relax a bit before starting to stir up trouble. Raindrops fell from the cloudy sky. A rich aroma that I hadn't smelled in 17 years hit my nose. The nostalgia, I thought to myself, looking at the boat, putting my hand on it, and trying to move it to storage. Storage doesn't contain enough space. Upgrade the storage or remove a few items, came the system's notification. I wondered whether I should leave the boat here or not. It clearly belonged to the Southern Water Tribe, whose members were known to have joined the rebellion against the Fire Nation. Even without the Fire Nation knowing what I did in the South Pole, they could easily find me here. Wait. If they find the boat, it would serve my agenda, I thought. That way, they'll link it to the sole waterbender who killed their soldiers if they ever find out. Just to avoid looking suspicious, I changed into casual clothes that I had found on the Fire Nation ship. I was now wearing wide black clothes made of silk. I tied my hair in a ponytail and put a bandana around my forehead. I then walked down the road of life. After a few hours of walking, I started missing gliding on the ice. There wasn't much water around. But I still had weapons in my storage, so that was fine. Before I could think about gaining experience or causing trouble, I needed to think about where I would sleep. I noticed that I was beside a road made for carriages. Deciding to take a break, I sat beside it and waited for any carriages to appear. I needed to ask about the locations. Acquiring a map would be very helpful. At times like this, you realize how helpful a flying bison would be, I thought to myself. A sound echoed, and I turned my head. A middle-aged man, green-eyed and wearing green clothes, was huffing as he dragged a cabbage cart. He stopped dragging and stood in front of me. The man was pulling a portable stall with his own strength. I could tell what he was thinking the moment he looked at me. My life, I thought. Where are the strength stats when you need them? Young man, he said. Sure, why not? I interjected as I stood up. I didn't tell you what I wanted. He asked. Since he had green eyes, a trait typical of the Earth Kingdom, it was obvious that he wouldn't be asking me for directions. You want help dragging that, I replied. It's good to see young, good men like you. But don't you have a place to be? He asked, smiling. I'm just a wanderer, I said, deciding to be honest. I don't know my way around, so I don't have a place to be. To your luck, I'm going to a place where you can stay for cheap. If you help me, I'll guide you to a nearby place where you can rest, he said. Though, I advise you not to cause any trouble. That place is governed by the Fire Nation. Sure thing, I replied. The money wasn't a problem for me, as I had looted the fire soldiers and their ship. But I needed a place to spend that money. How near is that near place? I asked the cabbage seller. We'll arrive soon, he said. For the last few hours, he had been saying the same thing whenever I asked him this question. It's no wonder the Avatar had a beef with him. This man was pure evil. Also, what kind of man is he, to get into places where the Avatar would reach by flying bison while still dragging a cart? Kai, I called. By your definition, what is near, and what is far? Bump. Shit, Kai cursed. As we had been talking, there was a hole we hadn't paid attention to. It was around 40 centimeters deep. The stall fell in. Forget I said anything, I said. Let's try pulling it out, Kai said, pulling with all his strength. But it was to no avail. I tried to help him too, but we couldn't do it. Seems we have to empty it, and then reload it, he said. I turned to the cart and shook my head. That was a lot of work, unpaid work. Forget it. I'm tired already, I grumbled as I sat down on a nearby rock. Young men nowadays are lazy, he grimaced. Ryak, we haven't been walking for that long. I pointed at the sky. The sun was about to set. Not long, my ass. When I met you, the sun was there, I pointed at the middle of the sky. And now it's about to set. I didn't know what this old man's definition of laziness or hard work was. I didn't know what the word, near, meant to him, but I knew that I was tired. There's no use in grumbling. Let's empty it, push it up, and then reload it, he said. You won't even feel the time passing. Excuse me, said a voice. You guys sound like you're in big trouble. We turned our heads to see a young, handsome man in his late teens or early 20s. Long hair, tanned skin, and green eyes. A native Earth Nation citizen. Great, Kai clapped his hands. Why don't you help us, young man? I turned my head toward the cabbage guy. Does he impose on people directly? No introduction, no courtesy. Just, help me. I guess the only thing this guy cares about is the cabbage. The young man smiled and replied, looks heavy, though. You won't feel the flow of time, Kai said. Besides, if you don't help me, I won't be able to feed my poor family. Poor my ass. Your stall has been wrecked by the Avatar multiple times across the nations, and you still manage to sell fresh cabbage every time. Forget it. I wonder how he's faster than a flying bison, I thought to myself, but I didn't say those words. The young man seemed to believe his story. A sympathetic expression took over his face as he said, in that case, I can't let your family starve. But you have to promise to keep whatever you see here a secret. Swear on your poor family. Kai rolled his eyes. I swear on my family, if you help me, I will tell no one about it. Very well, the young man said, raising his hand toward the hole and squeezing as if he were holding a lemon in his hand, slowly raising his arm. The wheel was lifted and the hole was closed in an instant. You're an earthbender, Kai said. The young man put his index finger to his lips. Remember, you promised. I know, Kai said. He turned to me. Earthbenders are taken to jail to be held. I promise I won't tell them. Happy. I sighed. I was soon to be an archenemy of the Fire Nation anyway. Well, not the Fire Nation as a whole, but the Fire Lord and his followers. I had no grudge against their civilians or soldiers, just the invaders and the supporters of the massacres. Just one more thing, I turned to the young earthbender. How near is the nearest village? It's pretty near. If you walk for an hour, you'll make it there. Just an hour, I replied after him. In my previous life, just an hour meant, hail a taxi. 2 hours, dragging that, he said. But if you want help, we can make it faster. What a young gentleman you are. Your peers should learn from you, said Kai. It was needless to say that he was talking about me. He's just an old man, I shook my head. I've always wondered why this world was full of assholes. I guess there's a good reason for that. Being nice isn't helpful. Thanks, smiled the young earthbender. What's your name, by the way? Kai. Ryak. I'm Haru, by the way. The three of us dragged the stall then. Not long after, as the sun was setting and the sky turned red, we arrived at the entrance of one of the villages of the Earth Nation. At the gate, there were two soldiers dressed in familiar armor. Two Fire Nation soldiers with long mustaches and sabers around their waist stopped us. They let Haru in as soon as he showed his identity plaque. The cabbage guy was allowed in since he had a reason for his visit. When it was my turn, the fire soldier said, "Your identity?" "Left it at home," I said. "It's very far from here." "Turn back then," he said. "What if I have a very good reason to come here?" I replied, thinking that Kai didn't have to show an identity plaque. It may be obvious that he's a merchant, or maybe he's just that famous in this world. "And what might that be?" the fire soldier asked. "Spend money to rest for a few days, and then I'll leave," I replied, taking his hand and placing 2 silver coins in it. "Very good reason indeed," he said. "I'm not convinced, though," the other fire soldier interrupted, extending his hand toward me. "Isn't it though?" I replied, placing 2 silver coins reluctantly into his hand. Lesson learned. Next time I want to bribe someone, I'll divide the intended money according to the number of guards and put it into their hands. I thought. "How long are you willing to stay?" he asked. 2 weeks at most. 1 week at least, I replied, not being entirely honest. "I might stay less, I might stay more." "Wait a moment, I'll write you an entrance permit," he said. "What's your name?" "My name is." I began, thinking of names for earthbenders, so I wouldn't get exposed as coming from another nation. Definitely, my name wouldn't be Jeff. But I had already exposed my name to Kai and Haru, so I needed to come up with a different name, yet keep my real name as a nickname to avoid suspicion. "My name is Boomy," I said. "But my friends call me Ryak." "All right," the fire soldier said, going inside to write a permit for me. When I held it, it was a wooden plaque. Permit. Boomy, aka Ryak. Duration. 2 weeks. Starting date. As I was about to enter, I saw a carriage being pulled by many monster beasts coming our way. From the carriage, a group of soldiers, lifting one injured soldier, entered. I resisted the urge to widen my eyes. The injured person, his face, somehow looked familiar. It was the survivor. "Sir, one of our soldiers survived the South Pole. He has to make a report, but he lost consciousness. We need to treat him immediately," said one of the soldiers to the gate guard. "Get him in." The gate guard yelled. "Call the doctor." The Fire Nation soldiers took the injured, unconscious firebender inside, ignoring me. I followed them into the village. Although my face appeared calm, my heart thundered in my ears. Isn't this happening way too fast? I haven't even recovered from dragging that ridiculous cabbage cart with Kai. I thought. But at least I got 3 cabbages for free. They'd make a good salad or could be cooked with eggs and cheese. What am I even thinking about? Focus, Ryak. You should be thinking about the firebender, not food. I shook my head. Whenever I'm nervous, I think about food. At this rate, I'll develop an eating disorder. But if I keep thinking like this, I'll end up dead. I was too distressed to think rationally. My plan had been to kill the firebender before he could give a report. But since he was here and injured, it might buy me some time. Still, being in the heart of enemy territory without experience made the situation feel suffocating. It's not the worst outcome, though. At least he's injured, so it'll take time for him to recover and describe the waterbender's face. The moment he wakes up and gives his report, I'll know, since I'm here. I just need to stop them before they reach the South Pole. That'll buy time for Katara and Sokka until the Avatar shows up. Man, if that bald kid doesn't wake up soon, I might have to become the strongest creature in this world just to survive. I scoffed at myself. Becoming the strongest was absurd, I didn't have that kind of physical strength. Still, Kai bending could help me overcome those limitations in the long run. What are you doing here? I turned to see Haru standing nearby, watching me from the entrance of a building. I'm just taking a break, I replied. Are you planning to sleep outside? He asked. It gets pretty cold at night. Pretty cold. It feels hot. I thought. I guess my pretty cold to him is the same as freezing to death. Don't worry. I'm used to colder weather, I said. Where are you originally from? He asked. One of the islands between the continent and the poles. You could say that. I'm from the south, I replied. Is it interesting there? Haru asked. If you think eating dried fish every day is interesting, be my guest. I shrugged. And there's literally only one girl there, I added mentally. As for Sokka, poor guy. The only girl around was his sister. Leaving was a necessity. At least it's peaceful. The Fire Nation soldiers didn't try to occupy your home, Haru sighed. That's something to envy. I let out a mocking snort. Peaceful my ass. Whenever a waterbender appears, they come, kill them, and then leave. Most of the adults went to your continent to join the rebellion. Killing them. That's harsh. Haru looked down. I guess I should be grateful my father is alive, even though I haven't seen him in years. Sensing the conversation was taking a depressing turn, I decided to shift gears. Forget it. I patted his shoulder. How are you doing? Taking good care of your family. My mom is sick, and I'm working at the shop, Haru replied. But the taxes are so high, it's hard to make a living. I know what you mean, I said. Anyway, is there a place I can stay? Can I rent a room? Sure. Do you have any baggage? He asked. Do I look like I have baggage? I deadpanned. We literally dragged a cart together. I thought you might have forgotten your stuff inside the carriage, he chuckled. Do I look like an idiot? I rolled my eyes. No, but you look like someone who could easily get scammed, he said. Besides, you seem frustrated. That man literally wasted half a day guiding me to a near place. Half a day. That's a lot. Finally, someone with common sense, I muttered. You seem exhausted. Rest for the night, and we'll talk about the rent tomorrow. How much is it per week? 2 silver coins. Sorry, I can't give you a discount because of the taxes, he said apologetically. That's fine, I nodded. The price wasn't an issue, I wasn't planning to pay with my own money anyway. Haru guided me to a 2-story building with a small shop in front. He led me to a back room with a bed, a table, and a window. It was a far cry from the comforts of my previous life. Guess I'll have to shower outside, I thought. Well, I can always bathe with waterbending. Anyway, I'll leave you to rest, Haru said. Wait, Haru. I stopped him. You're a local, so you probably know the area well, right? Yeah, sure. What do you want to know? He asked. I was wondering about the dangerous places around here. I've heard there are bizarre monsters everywhere in this continent. I want to know which areas to avoid. That wasn't entirely true. I wasn't looking for places to avoid, I was looking for a good place to grind my skills and get stronger before my identity was exposed. That's actually a smart question, Haru said, tapping his chin in thought. I don't know much, but about 4 hours northeast, there's a forest with massive trees. The monsters there are enormous, and some are so dangerous they require teams of benders to deal with them. 4 hours. I grimaced. That was a lot of time. And coming back would take another 4 hours, making it an 8-hour trip. I sighed heavily. It seemed like I'd have to exhaust myself physically before I could even start training. Nothing comes easy, huh? I'll just have to work harder. At least you'll have plenty of time to think while walking, Haru said with a grin. But don't stress yourself over it tonight. Get some rest. With that, I made up my mind. I'd head to the forest first thing in the morning to start hunting beasts. Apparently, I couldn't sleep much last night despite being exhausted from dragging a cart all day. I guess part of the blame lies with the unconscious firebender who had arrived in the village. The firebender was currently inside a large metallic base, which housed the prison for earthbenders. The entire prison was made of metal and resembled a castle. The interior was complicated, and killing the firebender would be foolish now. If I killed him, they would link it to me. The worst case wouldn't be linking it to me, but sending them to the South Pole. Really, what would anyone think if a survivor from the South Pole was killed? They would definitely go to the South Pole to investigate. My agenda was to cause havoc here anyway. And since the firebender was in a dire physical state, he would likely remain unconscious for a few days, maybe weeks. I wasn't sure. When I saw him, his fingers and limbs had turned purple. They're going to sever his limbs, I thought. I feel like a bad person. I could have relieved his pain a long time ago. Poor guy. In that case, I'll use his existence as motivation to gain as much power as possible. I thought as I walked in the direction of the forest that Haru had advised me not to enter. A drop of water circled my finger, moving quickly, creating sharp pressure that made a cut, causing blood to drip from it. I tried to control the blood, and I could, but the system didn't signal the discovery of blood bending. It seemed my waterbending skill was too low to achieve blood bending, or the training method I was using to unlock it wasn't correct. Tisk. I clicked my tongue. The small amount of water that had cut my finger calmed down and glowed faintly, healing the cut. I hope the beasts here aren't too difficult to deal with. After hours of walking, I stopped in front of a large forest. The trees were at least 5 to 15 meters tall. I looked at the ground and noticed there was no grass. The tree leaves are high, so the herbivorous monsters must be either large or have long necks. In that case, the predators would be huge as well, I thought to myself. Nature has a balanced system. Without carnivores, herbivores could breed uncontrollably until they eat everything, leaving nothing behind. Predators must be stronger than their prey. Since this forest seemed like a good place for large animals, I believed they would be worth a lot of experience. Okay. Let's have some fun, I muttered. I extended my hand to the left, and a long spear with a sword-like blade appeared in my hand. I turned around the forest and saw a few docile animals that resembled giant 7-meter-tall giraffes with wool-like fur. They were eating the leaves from the trees. They didn't attack me on sight, so I ignored them. I continued exploring until I encountered another creature, which was growling. It was about 4 meters long, with a long neck that extended for a meter. It looked like a wolf. Let me guess its name. Long-neck wolf. Smaller than the giraffes, but big enough to hunt them when in packs, I muttered to myself. The long-necked wolf turned to me. Its eyes lit up. It didn't seem interested in devouring me, but I looked like a suitable toy. It approached while jumping in a zigzag pattern. But I wasn't foolish enough to think it wanted to be friends with me. I had cats and dogs in my previous life. They do regard smaller species as toys, I knew that for certain. Even a full-grown cat would play with a mouse to amuse itself before killing it. I thrust my spear forward. The wolf reacted quickly and jumped backward, getting only a shallow cut on its neck. Hunting. ++ Express. Shit. I quickly opened the system and muted the notifications. I didn't need any unnecessary distractions. Grr. The wolf-like creature growled and crouched, shifting from playful mode to vengeful mode. At times like this, I would miss the South Pole and its endless water supplies. It reminded me that if I had fought the firebenders on land like this, I would have been killed long ago. I waved my hand, and a bottle of water appeared. I squeezed the bottle, and the water inside shifted shape, turning into a long spear that split into 3. The wolf seemed wary and circled around me, looking for an opening. Combining hunting with kai bending and waterbending should do it, I thought to myself as the 3 spears floated around me. Controlling all 3 at once was mentally taxing, but this was nature. The moment I let my guard down, I would die. I threw 1 spear at the wolf, and it dodged by jumping. Assuming it would land slightly to the left, I aimed there. One of the spears pierced its neck but didn't kill it, while the other struck its eye. The wolf dashed at me. It seemed to be telling me that if it fell, it would take me down with it. I waved my arms, defrosting the water and gathering it inside its system. I condensed all the water into a single chunk before freezing it. The wolf stopped and lurched backward before falling, hitting its long neck repeatedly. It tried to howl, but no sound emerged. I'm sorry, I murmured as I retrieved my spear and sliced through its neck. I opened the system and checked the notifications. Defeating long-necked wolf. Plus 1200 accumulated experience. Hunting up to level 8. Freeze up to level 6. Waterbending plus 200 express. Kai bending plus 200 express. Kai bending up to level 6, 100/800ths. The power-ups from Kai bending have improved by 5%. I stroked my chin, thinking that it wasn't a bad gain. 1200 accumulated experience, plus the skills I used leveled up or gained experience. If I spent time here hunting seriously and carefully, I could make a lot of progress. But I couldn't stay here forever. I needed to return to Haru's village to find out when the firebender would wake up. Because if he woke up, I would cause havoc. The best way to do so would be to wait for them at the ocean and flip their ships upside down. Easy kills and free experience. I'll call it a day. After a few hours, I muttered to myself. Just as I was about to leave, a chill ran down my spine. When I turned my head, I saw something that reminded me of an important piece of information. Wolves travel in packs. Around 17 wolves stood before me. Most of them appeared larger than the wolf I had just killed. They all stared at me intensely. I could feel the killing intent in their gaze. For real. What kind of rotten luck is this? Just when it seemed like things were finally going my way, I gripped the spear tightly as I took a step back. Two larger wolves approached the dead body and rubbed their heads against it. Great. Vengeful wolf parents. I can't make a smart decision now. I'm just a few seconds away from death, and I can't outrun them. I quickly opened the system. I poured all of my gained experience into Kai bending. Had this been the South Pole or the ocean, I would have gone for waterbending. But since I was on land, I needed to use this. Kai bending up to level 7, 401,600. Can circulate Kai around the whole body now. All boosts from Kai increased by 5%. I would have loved to calculate how much 5% from this level and 5% from the previous level had stacked up, but I wasn't in the mental state to do math. All I did was channel my chi around my body to increase my speed and power, and I summoned a barrel of water from storage. I turned quickly and began running, the water leaving the barrel and following me. The wolves ran after me, their speed greater than mine, despite my boost. The water surrounded my hands, turning into tentacles, which I used to help me climb quickly and pull myself up. Come on. Come on. I thought, sweat dripping from my forehead. Just an inch below me, a wolf opened its mouth wide, about to bite my backside. But I managed to escape at the last second. I continued climbing to the highest point in the tree and looked down. All the wolves were circling the base, staring up at me with fury in their eyes. Unconsciously, I patted my rear. It's safe. I breathed a sigh of relief. I moved the water from around my hands to my shoulder and deactivated the Kai boost to conserve my energy. I looked down again. The wolves surrounded the tree, occasionally jumping and growling, glaring at me. Show. I shooed them away. But they didn't seem to want to leave. What am I supposed to do now? Dance like a pole dancer while hanging at the top of the tree. I muttered to myself. I hate waterbending. Why couldn't I have been born as an airbender or an earthbender? Okay. There are 12 of them. They're not very intelligent, and I am. I can use this to my advantage. Let's see. I have one water barrel in my storage. Now that they're all gathered around me in one spot, a wide area attack might work. But I don't know any. I'll just freeze one of them and use the remaining experience points to level up freeze to make it deadlier. I started weaving my arms slowly and pushed. The water poured down. One thing I liked about water was how easy it was to manipulate. The water fell on one of the wolves. It tried to escape, but I made the water surround its neck. Then, I froze it. Killing a long-necked wolf. +1 200 XP. Freeze +200 XP. Waterbending +100 XP. Meh. I broke the ice, and with it, the neck of the wolf. I tried to turn it into water and pull it back, but the distance was too far, and I only managed to pull about 25% of it back to the surface. The wolves didn't seem to be scared after seeing two of their pack die. Well, it's instinct. If animals that hunt in packs could retreat every time one or two of them fell, they wouldn't have survived natural selection. I opened my system and poured all the gained experience into freeze. You know, the higher the freeze level, the colder the ice I could create. The colder the ice, the less water I would need to make them suffer. Extreme coldness can burn just like fire and hurt just as much. Freeze up to level 7. I circled my hand, and water appeared, creating a surface of water that fell as soon as I put my hands down. My aim is the head and neck. The water fell on a couple of the wolves while the rest of the pack backed away. The two didn't get surrounded by a large amount of water, but they were drenched enough. Layers of frost surrounded their faces and necks. They lurched and howled, hitting their heads against the rocks, trying to break the ice. They look more like white-faced wolves now. I waved my finger, concentrating on the freezing process. Unfortunately, they didn't die immediately, and I had to wait for half an hour for the freezing to take effect. Maybe it was the necessary time for their brains to freeze. Or maybe I didn't use enough water. Killing two long-necked wolves. +2400 XP. Freeze +200 XP 208,000. Waterbending +400 XP. Okay, this is progress, I muttered. At the same time, I didn't like how things were going. I had come here to level up kite bending and waterbending. While I was gaining experience at a good rate, my skills weren't leveling up as quickly as I'd hoped. However, my freeze skill was leveling up fast. Think about it from a different perspective. I'm gaining more tools to use. With less water, the ability to create extreme cold ice could be the key to survival. I thought. This skill has already saved me from the fire benders and trapped them. I summoned my second water barrel. I poured half the water out of it. I planned to use the rest to escape, as I had an idea of how to do so. As for the remaining half, I would use it to finish off the wolves. I poured a small amount of water on them, and they immediately dodged. They seemed to have learned the pattern. I expected you to do that, I smirked. The water they dodged surrounded their feet, getting them wet. A layer of frost began to form, hindering their movements. I then finished them off by pouring more water on them before freezing it. I sat back and waited for them to die. I bent the unused water back into the barrel and stored it away. The remaining pack members escaped, realizing they would only die if they waited for me to come down. It's okay. I'm not getting down until I hear the notification, I muttered as I put my hands behind my neck. Killing X4 long-necked wolves. Plus 4,800 accumulated XP. Freeze plus 500 XP. Waterbending plus 200 XP. Plus title acquired, the Beast's Hunter. Extra 40% experience when dealing with monsters. Do you want to equip the title? I looked at the system. It seemed I could equip one title now. But I would need a massive 50,000 XP to equip another. Skill trees. Waterbending 8. Kite bending 7. Skills. Hunting 8. Fishing 4. Freeze 7. Titles. 1/1. The Beast's Hunter. Accumulated XP. 7200. What's this? The storage needs experience to expand, and the titles require experience too. I just gained 7,200 XP. It's a decent amount. Maybe I'll have enough if I farm the rest of the beasts and hunt the docile ones. TS. Another chill ran down my spine. Don't tell me the wolves called their cousins. I thought as a massive tree was knocked down. A giant insect, 20 meters long, bigger than the red-furred giraffes, was crawling toward me. It had many long, sharp spiky legs and looked like a centipede with blue-black patterns. I have a confession. I have a phobia of poisonous creatures and giant animals. Now combine them. It walked over one of the dead wolves, and as it passed, the bodies vanished. It continued its way and didn't stop in front of my tree. Instead, it started crawling upward. I split the water and shot a small water jet at its head, freezing it. But it didn't stop and continued moving. The freezing didn't do anything. This thing is huge. I stood up. There was only one thing I could do. I was so terrified of the big black centipede. The octopus-like tentacles surrounded my hand, and I jumped off the tree. The water extended to another tree and wrapped around it, pulling me and allowing me to swing to another tree. I gave a side glance in midair. The giant insect crushed the tree and continued after me. Looking at its speed, I couldn't outrun it. Hiding deep in the ground wouldn't work. Even if I ran to the river, it would still be a tough opponent and would be able to catch up to me. In this case, I could only think of one solution: shift its attention to something else before it could catch up to me. And I did. Those poor giant giraffes that were eating peacefully found me swinging and slipping between their legs. They looked at me confused, but they soon met up with the insect. Upon crashing into them, the insect got angry at the giraffes. The centipede surrounded its body and crushed them before beginning to eat. I didn't stay to watch the show. I then swung away. I broke 2 eggs over the steamed cabbage, added some oil, and mixed the ingredients in the pan. Forget being an enemy of the Fire Nation, there are more scary things in life, I thought to myself. In my whole life, I never knew that you could actually exert your muscles beyond failure. I had sprinted, not just run, but sprinted out of the forest as soon as I had a chance, and I managed to make it back to the village in an hour and a half. Kite bending had helped me a lot to reduce the time it took to escape. And just to make sure the bizarre insect didn't have the chance to catch up to me thanks to some weirdly powerful sense of smell, I took a quick shower and changed my clothes midway. I'm seriously going to be traumatized at this rate. I took the pan off the fire and sat down to eat with chopsticks. I was in the open air, enjoying the food I had made, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the food into my mouth as my hand kept shaking. You may think I'm a coward, and you might be right. But in my defense, that centipede was 20 meters long. Had this been my previous life, if I'd faced a 50 centimeters long one, the first thing I would have done would be calling a therapist after managing to escape. You look quite distressed. Try drinking this. Haru came and stood next to me, handing me a small bottle of cow's milk. Where have you been? I decided to lie. Doing workouts. To build strength, you know. That's why you're cooking cabbage. He nodded. I gave him a side glance. There's no way one would build muscles by eating cabbages. Sure, the eggs and other added ingredients help increase the total protein consumed for the day, but if one wanted to build muscles, going for the South Pole or North Pole diet would be the aim. I was quite muscular myself. Who told you that? I asked him. Kai, replied Haru. He said hard work and cabbage are the way. He picked up chopsticks and joined me. And you believed him? I asked. Yes. I mean, look at you, he replied. I bought around 4 of them. He also said they'll help my mom recover her health. Suddenly, the cabbage tasted less appealing. Seriously. Lying to sell your cabbage, I can understand that. But using the fact that someone's mom is ill to sell them stuff. That's really low. I stopped eating. Why are these retail merchants full of lies? Well, I guess his beef with the avatar was just a matter of karma. I asked, did a doctor visit her? Doctor. You mean a physician, he said. That was the name of the doctor in this world, I guess. Yes, I nodded. He prescribed a set of medicine, but because of the high taxes imposed on us by the Fire Nation, we couldn't afford it, he said. I'm trying to hold on with medical herbs. That's rough, buddy, I said. Sorry to hear that. It's okay. With your rent and some side work, I'll be able to afford it soon, he said. Just don't move to another motel. Good luck with that, I said. Early at dawn, I had finished emptying my storage of clothes and food and locked it in my room. I had filled about 4 water barrels and placed them along with a few weapons. I guess I'm ready to go now, I thought. Waterbending plus 100 Express. Waterbending plus 100 Express. Waterbending plus 100 Express. I was standing on one bed, water surrounding my hand as it moved right and left over the forehead of an old, white-haired woman. Next to me, Haru was sleeping, his head on the bed. Healing was a skill I had acquired after my waterbending had reached the 8th level. If I recall correctly, the way my waterbending started leveling up was by doing simple tricks. After a few levels, those simple tricks wouldn't provide much experience, and I would have to do more complicated things. Healing the ill is the way from now on. Or complicated combat, I thought to myself. Looking at Haru's mom, I didn't think I was healing her. All I did was relieve her symptoms. She would need rest, medicine, and plenty of food. Maybe when my waterbending leveled up, I would be able to perform higher level healing. After I was done, I headed to the forest. I knew that it was quite a suicidal decision to return there after facing that large monster. But since I had managed to escape, I thought I might be able to do it again. I knew the way to escape, and I was willing to put everything I had into getting stronger. I knew what triggered that insect. It was the smell of the dead corpse that made it come. So, after hunting, I would have to move on quickly. And this time, I was better prepared than last time. I had more water in my storage. I stood in front of the large forest, Kai boosting my body as I moved around. I encountered different species apart from the long-necked wolves, a relatively smaller but bulkier, cat-like predator. I engaged in a fight with one of them, and they were much quicker than the wolves. I couldn't escape or outrun it, even with Kai boosting. In fact, I had to use an entire barrel of water to win. First, I used the water to create a defensive layer. When the animal tried to break through, I froze it and decapitated it. Killing large leopard. Plus 4,200 accumulated experience. Waterbending plus 500 Express. Freeze plus 200 Express. The leopard originally gave 3,000 experience points, but thanks to my title, I earned 4,200 accumulated experience. That was a massive gain for today, and I decided to call it a day before some predator smelled the blood. I decided to move on to a different hunting spot. And so, I did. I continued moving carefully for a couple of hours. By carefully, I mean hanging from one tree to another, keeping an eye out for any dangerous centipedes. Eventually, I managed to make it back alive. I'd slaughtered a few wolves, but I didn't encounter more cat-like predators. One thing I noticed was that the stronger the animals I hunted, the more experience they provided. I was quite curious about that insect, the one freezing didn't affect. I wondered how much experience it could provide me. Freeze leveled up to 8. Waterbending, level 8, 7,000 16,000. Skill trees. Waterbending, level 8. Kai bending, level 7. Skills. Hunting, level 8. Fishing, level 4. Freeze, level 8. Titles. 1/1 The Beast's Hunter. Accumulated experience, 18,200. Not a bad gain for a peaceful hunting day. I could level up my waterbending or any other skill I desired. Since my ultimate goal was to obtain the power to blood bend, I decided to level up waterbending. I couldn't believe I'd managed to gather the required 16,000 experience points, 7,000 through hard work and 9,000 through sheer effort. Seriously. Getting from level 8 to 9 requires more work than getting from 1 to 8. The growth rate must be exponential, or else I'll demand to return to my previous life, I muttered as I opened the system. Waterbending leveled up to 9,030,000. All skills under the skill tree upgraded. A surge of information invaded my brain. New movements and techniques appeared before my eyes. I quickly summoned a barrel and drew water from it. I extended my arms to the side, and 2 water tentacles formed, coiling around my shoulders. I noticed I could now move the tentacles independently with just slight muscle twitches. I turned to a nearby tree and waved one of the tentacles like a whip. From its end, pellets of water flew out, transforming into shards of ice that pierced through the bark. Okay. Harder to level up, but definitely rewarding. I experimented more with my waterbending. My ability to shape and manipulate water had greatly improved. I could now transform the tentacle ends into sharp ice blades, much sharper than at the previous level. Satisfied with my progress, I headed back to the village. I thought to myself that if the firebender didn't wake up today, I'd have more time to grow stronger tomorrow. On the way, I ran into Kai. I shot him a glare, unable to hide my growing annoyance with him. His eyes widened as he approached me, saying, "Where have you been? I've been looking for you all day." "Why?" I asked coldly. "You know the kind guy who helped us drag the cart?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "The one you scammed by saying cabbage heals the sick." "I didn't scam him," Kai retorted. "His mom could walk out of the house. He's been telling everyone it's thanks to the cabbage, and my sales have increased." I felt my lips twitch in frustration, veins pulsing on my forehead. Did he seriously start believing his own lies? Okay. Forget about the avatar. I'm going to wreck your carriage myself, I thought. Anyway, poor Haru, Kai continued sympathetically. He saved an elder from the village, but the elder snitched on him for pocket money. Now Haru is being taken to jail. And because he didn't turn himself in earlier, they plan to execute him this weekend to make an example out of those who hide their power. Thanks for watching.